Hello and welcome to the Nash Tackle Off the Hook podcast. Just to make you aware, this podcast may contain some explicit/offensive language, and if that's not your thing, you don't have to listen, but I have given you a warning. I hope you enjoy the rest of the show.
You don't know the half of it, but anyway. I'm skating on the thinnest ice known to man.
He said, and they put a poison in the tank that just instantly kills them. He went, and we've run out of it, so we cut their heads off with shovels.
Suddenly, bang! The whole boat exploded.
Take your sort of 8-inch long piranha and imagine that at 4, 5, maybe 6 feet.
I said, I've revived your dead fish. F off, he said. You haven't.
That was just humongous. It was... I couldn't believe what I was looking at.
I'm just battling this fish out, and I know it's a black man. I'm saying I'll never be a naughty boy again.
If you catch fish and you return them to the water, then you are my brother.
Lee Jackson, welcome to the Nash podcast. Thank you so much for coming in, mate. How are you?
Yeah, all good, mate. All good, yeah. It's a pleasure to be here as well. You know, I watched a few of the podcasts and I enjoyed them, and yeah, it's a privilege to be asked.
Bless, mate. You are, I'm going to have to say, when I was growing up, and we'll talk about certain bits of media you've done and stuff, definitely one of the anglers that I was, very much looked up to, and enjoyed the stuff you put out sort of publicly in terms of the media, but also your angling exploits, mate. So it's an absolute honour to have you in here.
Yeah, thank you.
What have you been up to recently?
I'm still doing a bit of fishing. I'm basically, I've always been a short session angler, so I don't do mega long sessions. For me, carp fishing too boring. A bit different if I go abroad or something like that, you know, or I got invited to fish Church Lake.
Good hit, nice.
And so I've been doing, going regular fishing and once a week, and I think as you get older as well, you tend to have to find a balance in life as well. So I mean, I've got. And I realised my selfishness in my early days, and so now, carp fishing is important, and I love it when I go, and I love, but some of the, and I always want to catch, but some of the reasons I just like sitting there in nice surroundings, and so in the great outdoors, and enjoying the nature side of things and everything, and I've got 12 grandchildren now, so 12, yeah. They've got to
keep
stop.
You busy, mate.
They got to stop it now because Christmas is getting a bit expensive, and it's life. And I think as you get older, I mean, I'm 65 now. You tend to slow down a little bit in life. Life needs to go at a slightly slower pace. But having said that, when you're in that, it doesn't. It seems. I've had conversations with mates of mine who are similar sort of age, and when you get older, you always think you should get less busier.
Yeah,
it seems it's worse. It's the other way round. Like
you're more busy.
Yeah, you're more busy. And it's. But I think in reality of it, you can't do it like you used to do. So that's when your head's busy. I mean, some Sundays, I have to sit there in the morning, and my head's full of. I can wake up early, and it wakes me up. All the things I've got to do. So I sit there and with a bit of paper, with my first cup of tea, and just write it all down. What I've got to do that day.
Your tick list, yeah.
And because it's on that bit of paper, it's out of my head. And it's on that bit of paper, and I work through it. And it gets done. And and in the end, I'm looking for stuff to do. So it's. But I suppose really you get a little bit lazier when you get older as well,
Mate, you're still out there catching fish.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I'm not talking about fishing, yeah. I love me fishing and I think always will,
Yeah,
and,
too right.
All the time I'm able and you don't lose the bug. Well, I haven't lost the bug.
No. Well, we're going to talk about selected episodes because there is an abundance of stuff we could possibly talk about, more than we've got time to actually cover. It's an incredible amount of sort of achievements, but also captures, places you fish, people you've mixed with over the course of your time in and around carp fishing.
Yeah.
I wanted to start with your Kent, and very synonymous with the Kent area. There's a number of historic, prestigious fish and fisheries, but how did your journey within carp fishing in the Kent area begin, and how did it progress?
Well, how my journey in fishing revolved. I mean, I lived in, I'm talking about when I was a nipper. It's I think I was always born to be a fisherman. Because we lived in a flat in New Cross in London, and in the garden there was what was an old air raid shelter. And my dad knocked the top of it, concrete air raid shelter, knocked the top of it and filled it up with water, and put some goldfish in it, and though because it had no filtration system, the water went pea soup green. And as a little 3-year-old, I'd spend all day out there gazing into that water, and so it was there from the very beginning, and when I was able, my sister was born when I was 6, and then we moved to Deptford, needed a bigger house basically, and I was always round the local canal with a net, catching sticklebacks and things like that, and then one thing that sticks out, it was the first time I ever went fishing. My dad took me fishing to, I must have been about 7 at the time, to to Caston Ponds. And I always remember getting there, and there was no one else there. And my dad knew nothing whatsoever about fishing. He was more a football man. In actual fact, he was a professional footballer.
Was he? Just
before the Second World War, played for Millwall. But then war came and it lasted 6 years, and that was the end of his fishing career basically. And but he took me to Keston Ponds, and there was no one else there. And I can remember being up this tree. He bought me a rod out of Woolworths, and a bit of fishing gear. Knew nothing about the fishing gear, so I probably had £18 line and quite a big bobby and float and stuff like that. And I can remember hanging out this tree, and there was a series on the television, or a program on the television called Yogi Bear, and the ranger was a character with a brown uniform with Ranger written on the top of his hat, and I was up this tree looking down at these, I think, which was little jack pike, and dangling a worm in front of them, and all of a sudden this guy shouted out, "Oi, you can't fish today. You have to go home," so he slung us off. And it turned out my dad didn't know nothing about fishing. It turned out it was June the 15th. And later in life, I thought, how unlucky did you get, but it progressed from there, basically. I started going, fishing. I joined a fishing club, which one Sunday we go sea fishing, and the next Sunday we go freshwater fishing. Went to, various venues, but I loved it. And then going fishing with mates. Now, when you live in Deptford, going to Dartford is like going out in the country, and so we, get the train to Dartford station from Deptford station or New Cross station, and we'd either go to, Brooklands Lake, Dartford Lakes, or whatever you want to call it, or we get on a bus from Dartford station up to Horton Kirby. And so that's where it started. And there was one day in particular where I heard a bit of a commotion going. It was Horton Kirby. There was a bit of commotion going on up the top lake, and this guy's, like you do when you're youngsters, run up and have a look. And this guy's landed a 14-pound carp, which I was really impressed with, and then I went back to my swim, carried on catching these roach and all that, and then all of a sudden there's another commotion going on, and his mates caught a 14-pound carp. Wow, look at the size of these things, and went back to my swim and, put the float out, and it's gone under, and I thought, what's the point?
Did you?
All I'm going to do is bring in another little roach, and so I nagged my mum to buy me a carp rod off a Bennett of Sheffield, by mail order, and a Mitchell 324, I think it was, and this was 1970 now, so that's when I started carp fishing. But to be honest with you, for that first year, I never really, I sort of played it with the carp fishing. I think I lost one, and that was about it. But I was just fishing with a match rod and put the carp rod out and let it fish for itself. And really, but the next year I nagged my mum to get me another carp rod, so I fished with 2 carp rods, and that's what I caught my first carp from Horton Kirby. So this was 19 71. Jeez. And then, but right from the start, it you know, like I said, it was like going out in the countries, going to those places, and you see these mysterious men sitting around the lake with like, floppy hats and all that, you know, and most of them would never talk to you, you know.
Would they not?
No, most of it's all secret, like, you know, and I was absolutely mad about by the Anglers Times, the Anglers Mail, anything to do with fishing, you know, whatever type of fishing it was, I was mad for it. And there was the early names that impressed me was Jerry Savage and Jim Gibbington, because they was writing articles and they was fishing in Kent, you know, and all the stories about the. I think that's how I developed a particular interest for bait, because, you know, they were talking about special baits and all things like this, and it was all mainly like it was all paste-like baits.
Yeah,
and so I was always experimenting. Like I caught my first double in February 1982, and that was in February. It was £24.
Oh, you beauty!
And that was a caught on a bait made from bone meal fertiliser, ground up bone meal fertiliser. You know, so I thought it was the best bait in the world. And then you know then the Fred Wilton thing started. You know, with the HMV baits, and to be honest with you, I still subscribe to that theory now. You know, because I think that's how nature works. I think nature works as human beings. We work on self-will, and so though our brain might be telling us, "Oh, you need a bit of sugar, or you need a bit of this, that, and the other," a lot of times we don't take no notice. Whereas in the natural world, a carp doesn't swim around the lake and think, "Oh, that's 90% protein, I'm going to eat that," you know. But instinctively, it acts on signals, you know. And so I always subscribe to. So for me, the bait, what I've got at the end of my hook is going to be the most important thing.
You said that to me. You said, yeah, bait is a massive factor.
Yeah, that's right. Day, yeah, I mean, in the order of sort of importance, I would think the first thing is looking after the carp. You know, well, the first thing is going fishing in the first place. It's all right sitting there like in the front room, you know, and not going fishing, but you're not fishing, are you? Secondly, I would think looking after the carp, you know, making sure they're, you know, and a lot of people would say the next one would be fish location. I agree to that to an extent, but many occasions, I think the most important thing is your bait, because if you get and Kent anglers, you know, especially like when your old mate Alan Smith and like the Fred Wilton crew and all that, they was ever so good at, and then like Peter Springate when, you know, he started using the Robin Red with Ian Booker and co and Kenny Odder. You know, once you get a bait going on the lake, then the fish locate the food they want to eat. Simple as, you know, and so I've always fished like that. You know, if I'm fishing the water regular, I tend to sort of try and aim to get my bait going, you know, and I generally do. You know, and so lots of times when I'm fishing, right to this day, I'm not only fishing one swim, I will put some of, you know, walk down. Probably I'm not disturbing anyone else's fishing. Of
course.
I'll go down there, throw a few baits under that tree, you know, and the carp's got a free meal, and gradually it works, you know. Obviously, if you're fishing against a team of anglers, then it's hard work, you know. And but no, the standard of fishing in Kent was, I think, because they was a little bit before their time, the Kent Riverboard, and they stocked lakes like quite early on in the 60s, you know, and consequently the lakes in the Dartford area in particular, they all held good fish. I mean, they were all doubles, and it was fairly rare to catch a 20, but, you know, it was, you know, there was, but throughout the country, I mean, I think Essex was the lake, the place that. And the thing is, because Essex, the thing is with the Dartford area, it's fairly easy for people who live in London to go fishing, and likewise people from Essex to go fishing. And so I think that sort of
that ring,
that radius, and you know,
Kent was the place, wasn't it? Then Essex came into the force sort of slightly later. But yeah, being around Kent.
Yeah, and a number of anglers over the years have cut their teeth on Kent waters, and they come to fish waters where they haven't caught very much, and learnt in Kent. And there's a lot of innovations, in Kent, Essex, and what have you. And it all sort of, because if I used to go to somewhere else in the country fishing, I used to sometimes think, you know what, there's something weren't right about it wasn't their fault. They hadn't, you need to learn these things, don't you? You don't just sort of pluck them out of the air. And but like Kent anglers or Kent who were based in Kent generally were sort of, top. I mean, obviously you had the Jackals and that in this world, who in early days did fish Brooklands Lake,
Yeah.
So, and the odd people around the country who were superb anglers because they're born that way, but by and large, Kent was a great learning curve, for the fishing. And I mainly used to fish. In the early days, it was Brooklands Lake, Dartford, and Horton Kirby. More so Brooklands because it had bigger fish. I mean, there was 3 complexes in particular. You had the Sutton complex. You had the Darenth complex and the Dartford Lakes and like Horton Kirby, and I might have already mentioned that. But in order of big fish wise, probably Sutton was the not as good, where Horton Kirby and Dartford were on par. They had big fish for the time, and so that's where most of the fishing was done. And but then I think it was a drought year of 1977. I think it was 76. No, 76. I mean, I actually poached what's now known as Sutton 2. I actually poached that once a week. My dad used to drop me down there, and I used to, but that was in drought. Water now isn't now underwater. It was islands and bars sticking out of the water everywhere because of the drought, and I done really well in there, and never managed to get slung off neither. Only doing day sessions, and I caught most times I went.
Did you?
Just for the day.
Where were you up to tactically there? Was it free lining still, or were you using?
Most of the fish I caught then, I caught quite a few on like floating crust.
Yeah.
We used to sort of, and that went for all the waters. It was 2 rods, and a lot of the waters I was fishing at the time, you start off with 1 rod, and it was anchored up crust. Like you used to use a link ledger, and you used to cast it out, let the line go naturally, sort of sink. And like let it up, and it actually pops up to the surface. And then if there was a few ducks about, you'd pull it under the surface. So sort of like a zig rig, basically. And but 9 times out of 10, you start with 1 rod on the surface and end up with both rods on the surface, because they're more productive, and a more exciting way to go fishing. And but bait wise, I think it progressed. For me, it progressed fairly quick. I was, Fred Wilton publicised his PYM recipe, so I was basing stuff on things like that. A good bait has always been my number one thing. Like, if I haven't got, the carp out there, they don't. They don't give a shit what sort of rig you're using, what your bivvy's like, or what your rods are like, or anything. All they think about is food, isn't it?
Yeah.
So for me, that's the important aspect, And like sort of nowadays, you get people go to France and for a week, and they buy new rods, they buy nice reels and new bivvy and all that, and they go and buy a bit of cheap bait. I'd rather have a shit bivvy and
decent bait,
not so good rod, but a decent bait.
Yeah. But you, during this time when you're sort of, if you like, going through your formative stages on these venues in Kent, what sort of significant people were around that you were learning off, or is it all sort of self-experimentation?
It's I think we all learn off of each other, really. Yeah. There was guys like the Chad Valley group, like Dickie Caldwell and Bob called, I forget his name. The Chad Valley, they was basically particle anglers, so and good at it, and so you learn a bit off of them, you know, and likewise they learnt a bit off of you about boilie fishing,
Yeah.
you know, and you know, I think, I mean, I was predominantly a boilie user, but you know, I did get on. You had the likes of Rod Hutchinson. Obviously, he was one of the ones who started the boilie. The particles thing really, or popularised it. You know, and so you know, but the people. So you had influences, and even back then, and there's always going to be the case. There's more capable anglers, and there's not so capable anglers. And I think, and from my point of view, I would always keep an eye on what someone's doing, and likewise, those good anglers would keep an eye on what everyone else is doing, and you learn from each other, you know.
Yeah.
And that's it. I mean, you had Kevin Maddocks. You had Peter Springate and all that fishing on there. Great bloke. I used to see sort of Pete once a week. I mean, he was repaired hoovers or washing machines or whatever. And he had on a Friday. When I was a dustman, I used to bump into Pete. He's, you know, around the area, and he was on his way to Raysbury, and I was probably going to Darenth, like, you know. But most of my early fishing on there, you know, apart from the Brooklands and the Horton Kirby thing, was on Darenth Big Lake. You know, the Darenth Big Lake. I learnt a lot on there. You know, and that's where really, you know, I'd fished it early days, but back then it was. I mean, the carp successfully spawned in 1972 on Darenth Big Lake, and so by the time you talk about 74, 75 now, that you catch sort of 6 or 7 fish in a day, right. And but they'd all be sort of 6, 7 pounders, you know. And but another guy I met there, a guy called Tony Owls. I always remember that Tony was an excellent angler, like even Derek Stritton and whatever. But Tony, he took me under his wing a little bit, because, I mean, when I caught that 24 pounder in 1972, I thought I was a nuts, like, didn't I?
That's ridiculous, though. That is a ridiculously big fish.
In February 1972, it's a winter fish as well, you know, and I put it in the Anglers Times, and there was a picture of me, you know, and on that Sunday, the Angling Times came out on a Wednesday, I think it was a Thursday, and I went fishing at Horton Kirby on the Sunday, and I walked past this bloke and he said, "Oh, well done with your fish, mate." And this guy was sort of dressed in all camo gear, looked like he was a soldier, you know. Yeah. And his rod set up was, he had these beach caster rings and all that. But we got chatting, and I said to him, "Oh, thank you very much." And he was a really nice bloke, and he used to give me a lift home, part of the way home, you know, on his way to, I think he lived at Walthamstow or something like that. And but I learned a lot off Tony. But one thing I did learn off, to this day, he used the biggest baits I've ever seen. You know,
what we're talking?
Well, a lot of it was free lining.
Yeah.
Bear in mind, them days, his bait. It's a paste bait I'm talking about. It was about the size of an orange. You know.
Go on.
In the winter time, he used to use a third rod, and he'd always use luncheon meat on that third rod. He'd open a tin of luncheon meat and cut it in half, and half a tin used to go in the hook. And Tony didn't used to catch as many fish as some people, but Tony certainly caught the big ones.
Yeah,
you know?
I bet he did.
So I learned a lot of Tony, like watching Tony and listening, you know, his stories and everything like that. And he was a big influence, you know, and a lovely man.
What was all that like? I mean, you've named some of the absolute great and good of sort of carp fishing, Springate, Maddocks, the likes of. What was the whole sort of social scene like? Was it still relatively secretive? Were they all a bit more sort of friendly, a bit more sort of open? How did that all sort of adjust?
It was still fairly secret.
Was it?
Secret, like, you know, you sort of, you know, you had to, you know, if someone catching fish, so you had to take notice of where they was catching, because they wouldn't tell you, you know, and or if they did tell you, you'd think, you know, you go the opposite to what they said. It's all very secret, especially like the air rig thing, you know, that was, you know, I found out the air rig completely by accident, you know.
Wow.
And, you know, I was a bailiff on Darenth Big Lake at the time, and there was a particular day when I was fishing, because I had my bait going. My bait was really working well, and I turned up and I fished next to Kerry Maddocks, and honestly, I didn't stop getting action. Action all the time, and I think I caught about 4 fish, 4 carp, and just a day session.
Right.
And Kevin didn't catch anything, and he said to me, he went back to his car. He said, come back with a bag of boilies, and he said, I think our bait's blown over here. He said, me and Len have caught a lot of fish on it, this summer, and this was like approaching winter, sort of autumn time, and he showed me this bag of baits, and it was quite small baits, I suppose about sort of, small comparison to what I was using. It was probably about 14 mil, something like that, and but they were like bullets, like stones, And I can remember saying to Kevin, how the bloody hell just strike a hook through that, And he didn't answer me, but that played on my mind. And when I got home, I couldn't stop thinking about them baits, how hard they were, And I thought, well, hang on, when I fish with like particles like chickpeas and things like that, I just put a chickpea on the hook, and the hook's sort of poking out, And so I made some boilies, small boilies, and next time I went fishing, I had one of them on one rod, with the hook hanging out of it, and the other rod with the bait inside with the hook inside the bait, and all of a sudden I had this steamy run at the one where it was, poking out. And the thing that impressed me most, what you used to have to do was strike, to
set the hook,
set the hook. But I picked up the rod, and the rod went like that. This carp was hooked. So that was like sort of early bolt rig days, and like gradually quite a few anglers on the lake started doing the same, and.
So how were you fixing that? Were you fixing just a little bit of whatever the knot was that you tied the hook onto?
I just threaded it onto the hook, with the threaded it on with the hook sticking out the side of it,
Okay,
side hooking in actual fact, But in it progressed to pushing the hook up so it's near the eye of the hook, and that which became known as a bolt rig, and a lot of anglers on Darenth Big Lake, got onto the same idea. The following year, I wasn't fishing. I wasn't fishing Darenth at the time. I was fishing Walthamstow Reservoir on Lockwood, and I was a bailiff there, so I'd walk around every day, and it came across these 2 guys who I knew, and everyone that year, loads of people were complaining of getting bite-offs. The fish is taking it obviously past its teeth and just
cut you.
And a couple of is Frank and Colin, and they was in bits. They said, Lee, we're getting a bite off at about 1 every 5 minutes. If you stand here and watch, you'll see it. And then they use bottle tops for indicators, and it just lifted a little bit and then reeled it in. He's got no hook. And and I said to her, what did you try? And we've tried doing this, tried doing that, and so I thought about that all the way home, all evening, everything, and the next day I went fishing to Lockwood, and I caught an 18-pounder, and I can remember sticking my finger in its mouth and seeing how far the teeth were, before, and from memory, it was about 4 inches, and so what I'd done, then I tied, using a bit of 7-pound seal cast, I think, which I was using. I tied a bit of that on the bend of the hook, and then attached the boilie to that. So you got the hook there, and like 4 inches below
to separate it. Yeah,
you got the boilie there. The hook there, boilie there, and I took it around at one of my mates, John, who was going to Darenth the next day. And I said, and we laughed about it, and he rang me up the following evening. I said, how'd you get on? Or I rang him up, and he said, I four. I said, what was the bites like? He said, just screamers, shit, So I stumbled upon it, but I still didn't use it myself until I went back on there to fish the winter, and then I I thought, you know what, I'm going to try that, what I was doing, you know, and but the problem is, John, that first session he done okay, but after a while he stopped, he obviously the air was too long, you know.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what he'd done about it, but when I went back on there in the autumn, and I started messing about with it, you know, I tried a bit of line about an inch and a half. I've got to say them was about right, about an inch and a quarter, you know, long air, you know, from the the bottom of the hook to the top of the boilie.
Yeah.
And there was one day where, I mean, Lenny Middleton was still fishing. I can't remember if Kevin Maddocks was, but Lenny was still fishing there. And but if Lenny cast out, you'd walk away, you know, because it was all very Secret Service, you know.
Right.
But I had nothing to hide, and I can remember he walked in my swim, and I was just casting out a rod, and when I looked around him, his face was, you know, horror, you know, and I looked at him and he said, "What you just cast out there?" He said, "Don't tell anyone." I said, "Oh, all right, Len." I didn't ask him why, then he walks off, you know, and so I thought it must be something like what they're using, you know, and sure enough, it all come to light eventually, you know. I mean, I think someone reeled in some snapped off tackle, which one of those, you know, Lenny or Kevin or Paul Bray or whatever had snapped off, and so the air rig was born, really, and you know. And
was it that much of a game changer? Yeah,
massive game changer. You know, it was, I mean, you know, when you consider what we was doing, like striking hook through bait and everything, like, you know, now almost every carp that picks up your bait,
it's done, isn't it?
Was hooked, you know, and it made a massive difference, you know. And I can remember going to other lakes in Kent where the anglers didn't know about it, you know, and you know, but they obviously see you catching, and I can remember rather than tell them to, or sometimes I tell them to go away, because you go away while I land this fish, you know, and which what it's like. Let's be secretive, but you know, but sometimes I'd get the bite, it's flying off, and I'd just sit there and watch it, you know, while this guy's there, like, you know, and you know, and then pick it up, and then when I was going to net the fish, I'd ask him to go away, you know.
And they'd go away, yeah.
And they would go away, yeah. But then eventually, I used to always end up, depending on the person, I used to end up sort of saying that, but, you know, telling them what it is, you know.
After you've had 26 fish and they've had nothing.
Yeah, no, not quite the best, you know. I've always been, you know, like to help people, but you know, when it's a little edge, and you know, it's sometimes you've got to keep it a little bit secret, you know.
Yeah, too right. Your time throughout those lakes and your progression, you said you learnt most on Darenth, you reckon, as in a
probably
breeding ground.
Yeah.
In terms of learning, obviously hair rigs exempt because we've gone through the sort of process of that. What did that lake really teach you in honing your angling? It was still short session based, wasn't it?
I say most of my fishing was on Darenth Big Lake. Funny enough, I thought about it when you rang me the other day. Up until recent years, I used to like flitting about to do a day here or a day there, and I used to, if I caught a carp, I used to, you know, write the water down. And when I last looked at that, eventually it got wet and it all faded. I used to have that in my pocket or in my wallet, and I think it was something like I'd caught carp out of 200 different waters, you know.
Jeez.
And so I just used to go for days for here, there or whatever, including 5 rivers. And I just used to like a change, you know.
Yeah.
But when I was serious fishing, it was probably at the time like Darenth Big Lake, you know. But then again, sometimes when it got to, it's like playing a game, isn't it? You know, once you've sussed it, you then sort of want to go somewhere. You know, once you've sussed it, you go wherever.
Yeah.
But certainly, Darenth Big Lake gave me the confidence that I could catch carp anywhere. You know, because I learned a lot about bait. You know, how you make bait available to fish and how to eat that in preference to everyone else's. You know, and yeah, so it was. That's where Eric mainly helped me, and obviously we were fishing with some good mates as well, good anglers. You know.
Who'd you have with you?
I had, I mean, Essex mates like Jimmy Burns and Alan Partridge, Kevin Ellis, and all that. And they were all Essex lads, and Mickey Slaughter, my mate Alan Smith, who unfortunately died, tremendous angler, and a master at getting the bait going as well. Yeah, and various other people. I've got to apologise at this point if I probably forgot someone, but there was quite a lot of them. And
sorry, mate, I've put you on the spot, haven't I? There,
no, not really.
There's some unbelievable people. Like we talked about, like just some of the names that we've mentioned already. You Kevin Maddocks, you've got Martin Locke, you've got everybody, even Rod, the likes of, that were coming into the area. For you at that time, was there any sort of, I don't know, idols? I know they were publicised sort of quite loosely. A lot of these, they're sort of building their repertoire, but you'd seen them on the bank in the flesh. Was there anybody that you thought out of all that lot that was sort of real head and shoulders above?
I think if there was, but there was quite a few of them, Right. So I'm not going to put anyone up on the pedestal. But the only thing I will say, the two people in carp fishing that I would put up in on a pedestal would be Rod Hutchinson. As far as I'm concerned, Rod is the god of carp fishing, and the other one would be Tim Paisley.
Yeah,
be honest with you, because Tim's, he's been doing it lots of years, and what he's done for carp fishing as well. And there's no doubt he's got a track record. He's caught some big old carp in his time, and broad and. But he's a sort of different sort of angler than I am. I want to catch one now. I don't want to wait 3 days.
He likes a long session, doesn't he?
Yeah, and we're when we used to fish with Dean together in places like the World Carp Classic, I want to catch him now. I don't want to wait 3 days. And where Tim's getting settled into it after 3 days,
He's in his zone, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, I've always been, I'm quite an impatient person. My first wife used to say to me, I'll be screwing something onto the wall and it ain't going right. I'll be throwing the screwdriver about, the drill about and everything. She said, you're so impatient. I don't know how you get on with fishing, because it's supposed to be a pace thing, a bit of patience, isn't it, And I used to think to myself, well, perhaps that's why I'm not too bad here, because I want to catch them now. I don't want to wait, sort of,
I get it done, yeah.
Bruce Ashby was another big influence. I loved, like Bruce, I used to have all my rods built by Bruce, But Bruce at the time, I'm talking about real early 70s. Bruce was Mike Harris was fishing like farm ponds, what they call farm ponds in Kent, But I used to love Bruce. I used to love his sense of humour, and he was a real nice man. And by this time I was working part time in the camping shop near where Bruce lives, and I always used to go around his house and had my rods built by him. I always remember one thing, Bruce. Bear in mind, Bruce at the time was probably fishing lakes where you're free lining sweet corn,
Right.
Where I'm fishing lakes like Darenth, big lake, which at the time was a big lake, and Schoolport at Faversham, and I asked him to make me a set of rods. I don't know why you want to have rods that cast 100 yards. You can't get your free offerings out that far. I said, Bruce, I don't give a monkeys about the free offerings.
Yeah.
If I turn up for an afternoon's fishing and the carp are jumping at 100 yards, I want my hook bait out there, And I think that's what gave me the confidence to fish with single hook baits, because some people even nowadays, they can't fish without putting in free offerings. I've had 5 fish recently, and they've all been caught on single hook baits. I'm not saying I've not put a single bait round my a single free offering round my and I won't say I haven't put a few boilies under that tree and that tree and that tree over there like I normally do, but where I'm fishing, because you're fishing for like fish that are very aware of being fished for, and sometimes you can take one cast and you don't see him again, And
special hook baits, mate. I'm guessing you're your own sort of.
Yeah, well, I've been involved with a company for the last year, which called Clear Margin Angling, and there was a new company. Two people who sort of fancy making a bit of, they both got their own businesses as it is, but they wanted to, try their hand, and they started off with bait. And I was given I was offered, to come in with them, and I was like a kid in the frying shop, because they gave me the sort of thing of designing the bait, and I designed a real good bait for them, and last year in particular, it done so well, But as you know, it's all about social media now, and if you got to get sort of and
marketing wise, definitely, it's big,
and another thing is it's the, I don't know, you can't sort of, there's not much profit in bait really, and it's a very competitive market, very, very competitive market, and so it all, this year the company packs up, there was, because financially it wasn't working, and just recently I've got involved with another company. I keep my eye on social media, and I keep an eye on what works on lakes I fish, and bait wise. So bait's always been my interest, and there's two companies in particular. I won't name them. Well, I'll name one of them's name because I'm involved with them now. A company called Steamies, and which are fairly near to where I live. They're only a small company.
Okay.
But I've seen the results that people have on their baits, and also another company as well, and I like the idea of steaming, because I've always been a fan. I've tried it, it's not to good effect, mind you, myself, steaming baits, but there's no doubt about it. If looking at the nutritional value, wise, you just
you retain so much more.
Yeah, retain so much more. So that's right up my street. So I had a meeting with them recently, and I just started with them. So I know. But the thing is, there's a lot of good baits out there.
Yeah,
and there loads of. I mean, one day someone will discover a boilie that doesn't, bring out a boilie that doesn't catch carp. But by and large, I still think it's the good baits. That catch the bulk of them. But going back to, I used to make some pop-ups for Jacko pops, called them. I used to make them for all the stuff I was getting early at the tackle box, and make some pop-ups before the shop opened and everything, and all of the staff I think used to, at the tackle box at the time, used to use them, and those phenomenal, and I used to use them. I used to use them myself, all the time, irrespective. Like, I'd use a snowman rig. I'm quite a big fan of using snowman rigs, because it's a different feeling in the carp's mouth, rather than a round boilie or whatever. And so if I was immaterial what bait I was putting in as free offerings or got going, I'd use a Jacko pop on top, And people used to say, hang on, don't you like to match the hatch, makes you... I said, no, far from it. This is the best of both worlds, because I've got a really effective pop up there. And...
your feed bait that you've been...
And my feed bait. Yeah. And like fish like human beings, some fish have got different tastes. How many times you hear of that fish comes out on a creamy bait or a fruity bait, or, And
well, you change if you're fishing a water and there's a fish. Is that because obviously I've talked about numerous times with various different anglers who are sort of target anglers, and they talk about location, they talk about areas, they do talk about bait application, but primarily the first sort of port of call is, where has that fish come from? Can I get into that area? Is it a chance that if I do get a bite in that area, it's going to be that fish on this particular moon phase, this particular time of year? But for you, you're saying that your sort of status, if you like, of bait, if you're fishing for a fish and it comes out on a a bird food creamy type bait, you would switch your bait to that type of bait, would you?
Possibly.
Right.
Possibly. No, if the bait wasn't, it's because though there's fish that seem to prefer us. Eventually, if you've got a bait going, eventually you'll catch all of them.
Yeah.
But what happened with the Jacko pops suddenly staff changed at the tackle box and everything, and people started, and Martin Locke, Solar Tackle, started doing them in his range, and to be honest with you, they worked really well, but they wasn't that popular. They were popular in the tackle box and maybe one or two other shops, but you seem to get that with bait. If a bait company or is in the south,
it's not always.
It's not always in the north, and vice versa. So Solar done them, and people used to catch it. I was always having people ask me about them, and funny enough, my mate, one of my best mates, Rod Killick, who's he's quite a bit older than me, but he's a successful angler, and fishing on the Tip Lake, he's caught immaterial what he's been using as free offerings. He's always used it as a Jacko pop, as hook bait. So he's caught, I think 95% of the carp he's caught out of the lake have been caught in a Jacko pop. And then just recently, and he used to say to me, I don't know why you don't use him. Then something recently happened whereby, I won't name the name, but it's quite a famous angler. And he rang me up and he said, I was talking to so-and-so, who's also a famous angler. He said, he was talking about your Jacko pops. He's caught hundreds of calves on them. And I thought about it. I thought, do you know what? I ought to make some. So I sent off for some pop-up mix and got the flavours, or we had the flavours indoors, and essential oil as well, and essential oils as well goes into it, and I made a batch up, and that's what I've caught the last 5 fish on, and I've given them away to people on the lake, and they've caught on them as well recently, and so that's my initial input for the company steamers. They're going to bring out the Jacko pops as in the range, so it's a starting point.
Fair play,
yeah.
Mate.
So it's
it makes sense, mate. They've been successful, and also it's a massive part for you of what encompasses your angling bait. As you said it from the very start.
I've got to be confident. I've got to be confident on the sort of. I mean, confidence is a massive thing, not only in fishing, in a lot of things, in life.
Yeah, definitely.
I've got to be 100% certain. I'm not always 100%. I can make myself very unconfident very quickly. If the siltweed's bad and all that, if the bait was on a good spot and I've reeled it in and it's covered in siltweed. It plays with my brain.
Does it? Yeah. The sort of weird carp fishing ick.
Yeah, but this current time, I'm confident of, and I've only got to catch one carp to do that. And if I catch one carp, I think, well, that's it. I can catch another one, and the confidence rises. And I just keep doing the same thing. I'll use the same. If I got something I'll catch on, I'll use the same bait and the same rig on all 3 rods. No point in deviating if it's working.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, some people they try a different thing on each rod, don't they? But it might be that rod's in the wrong place. So or whatever. So that's how I fish basically. But if I go fishing and catch one carp and that's it, I'm confident I'm going to catch another one.
You talked before, and you talked on a number of occasions about getting a bait going. So before we sort of go back, if you like, to come forward, while we're on this section talking about it, for you, getting a bait going, and you're talking about short session fishing, even nowadays when you've got a bit more availability of time. That process of getting a bait going, scattering some baits around, and is there a set level at which you do that? Amount of times you can visit a lake to do that? Does it depend on stock? What have you found in your sort of course of time about establishing a bait?
Yeah, it's just a case of. I mean, the thing is, most of. I won't say they're heavily stocked, but it's just. I think I don't put loads of bait. But I make use of what the bait I've got. I'm not one of these people who fire out 5 kilo or anything like that. I will put, and if I put it, spread it around, the immaterial of how many carp are in the lake, if I spread it around a bit, just a few here, a few there, a few there, I might use it in a 24-hour session. I might in total only use 1, maybe 2 kilo of bait.
Okay.
And I've never found it me personally, I know some people have had tremendous results there. I'm there to catch a carp now, not to wait till tomorrow or the day after, So I tend to use a limited amount of free offerings, But another thing I also do, rather than take the bait home with me or everything, I'll put everything I've got in at the end of the session.
Okay.
Again, providing I'm not disturbing them, And it's always gradually, and if you get a couple of other people using the same bait on the lake and they're doing similar,
that magnifies it, doesn't it?
Yeah, that magnifies it, And I've been on the dishing out side of things and the receiving end as well. Where I've been on fishing on the lake where there's a group of lads got their bait going and you can't, when it's feeding time, the carp swim straight past yours to eat theirs, and it hurts.
Yeah,
but likewise, I've been on the dishing out end where take the Colne Valley water arrow, that the biggest fish in there, chopped dorsal in 2 years. We was a party to Paul Forward, especially was parts of designing the club mix, and we all had us lads had a sort of contributed to it, and that bait caught. I think it came out 8 times in 2 years, and we caught 7 of those times on the same bait. So that's
yeah, that says something, doesn't it?
Yeah. Whereas, and like Alan Smith, I can remember Alan, like he was before he died, bless him. He was superb at it. And he was when he was fishing that same lake. We had a bait company together in sort of about 1988, something like that, maybe before that, and we only started up to sort of, it was Alan's idea. Alan was getting bait ingredients for lots of people, famous people as well, and a lot of it was most of it was making your own bait, and I think Alan just approached me one day and said that. I just feel like starting up a little bait company, and we did. He said, just pay for our own fishing and a little bit of pocket money and what have you, and we did, and we started Ultima Baits, and there was no such thing as ready-made boilies. It was all we used to sell all 10-ounce mixes then.
Yeah.
All that stemmed from like Fred Wilton era, where you could easily work out the protein content of a bait,
Yeah.
and divide by 10's easier, so we used to sell a 50-ounce bag, which was five bags, 5 10-ounce mixes within one bag, and it done the business, but it really did do well to the extent that both either myself or Alan would have to pack up their full-time job, or both of us had to pack
Wow,
it.
so it was busy then, yeah.
It was getting busy, but the problem is we both had young children. I had 3 kids. I think Alan had 2. Both had secure jobs, albeit mine was as a dustman, and Alan had a secure job. We weren't prepared to take that chance. But then what happened, one of the main ingredients we put in the bait, which was a milk protein called casein, which a lot of people know, and but casein was dodgy. You could buy it, no doubt about it. They used casein to make glue and things like that, and paint and stuff like that. So it was very. I think another thing apart from nutritional value of a bait, I think another thing's very important is the digestibility. How digestible a bait is for a carp, Yeah. Having said that, I haven't got a clue why they eat tiger nuts.
Yeah.
It must be. Do you know what I mean? That's not digestible. No. It's got hardly any
nutritional
value, is it? But anyway, that aside, so the casein which Alan used to get was come from Holland, and if in simple terms, our casein is made. You get, if you was to get a pint of milk, put an acid with it, then you get a gel form in the bottom, and then they. So that within that gel there would be casein, lactoglobulin, or however you pronounce it, and whey protein, and they separate it out, and that's how they produce casein.
Right.
And the only difference with the Dutch casein was, and I think this is perhaps the only a test we used to do was to put how good the casing was get a spoonful of it, put it in a glass of water, stir it. If it congealed, honestly, you have to scrape it off the spoon, But this particular casing, it went like snowflakes, and it was by and far the best there was. But then it became unavailable, all because of these milk quotas that they brought in under the EU thing, and because Holland in particular, most of their trade was with business with casseinates and not casein. They decided to discontinue the casein and just do casseinates, and so then really that forced us to pack up the bait company as well, and then we went our own ways. But talk about availability of food, like Alan was, he was a master at getting the bait going, and the bait he went on to was something very similar, simple, and what it was homemade baits. Obviously, it was to a 10-ounce mix. It was 8 ounces of mackerel herring flavoured go-cat, ground up, and 2 ounces of calcium caseinate, and that was it, And he absolutely took like arrow apart on it, And I had other mates ringing up, and because he got it going, And the same thing, I had mates ringing me up, Jimmy Burns in particular. I'm thinking, what's he doing?
What's he doing? Yeah.
He turns up, fires out 50 baits, and every carp in the lake's in front of him, And so that's the availability of food. But Alan was very clever at it. When the carp was spawning on that lake, they always used to, and there was quite a lot of male fish. They used to like a munch afterwards,
Yeah, recondition themselves.
Yeah, that's
so you used to put it in to make sure.
The area they were spawning, he used to fill it in with bait.
For you, when you were fishing, like areas that you'd put bait in, you talked about obviously avoiding other anglers, but would you put it in sort of holding areas like snags or somewhere which is safe for them, that sort of place?
Yeah, it's somewhere where they get a free meal. A free meal, and the main thing is you're not disturbing other people's fishing.
Yeah, of course. And when you're actually fishing over it, I'm guessing you're not putting large quantities out. You're fishing for a bite, like you say.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I mean, when I was fishing Darenth Big Lake, and I had a bait going on there, it was 3 short sessions a week. And I mean, short sessions. I'd get there sort of as soon as I finished my job as a dustman, and then go home at 5 o'clock for my dinner. So I'd get there sort of anything between 11 o'clock in the morning to 5 in the afternoon, and like, especially in the winter time, I used to. It was important to keep bait going in to keep the fish interested.
So through the winter as well, yeah.
But what I used to do, I used to fish 3 lots of short sessions, just using single hook baits. And on the 4th week, I'd put about 200 baits out, scatter them all around the place,
Yeah.
But the difference is between that and nowadays, 200 baits was a lot then, but it's not a lot now, is it? Some people put 200 baits out around each rod, And
have you seen that have an effect? Obviously, weights of fish wise is a bit more.
It's made a massive effect from fish weights, and the amount of 40-pounders now and bigger, and the bream have got bigger, the chub have got bigger, the barbel have got bigger, and all because of boilies, and I'm sure it is. It's there could be no other reason. They're carp at the end of the day.
Yeah,
and but no, it's sort of revolutionised. Big fish. What about now? But it's always But even then, I still sort of think. All I want to do is catch a carp when I go, and I'm not worried what it is, what size it is. Obviously, I had a young lad. I was fishing the lake down in near Snodland, or in Snodland, in the winter time. It was difficult, just doing overnighters, and in the morning I was just packing away after work, and this young lad came along and he said, you caught one here? I said, yeah, I caught one. I said, a 14-pounder. And he sort of went, like, I said, hang on, listen here. I happen to be really happy with that carp. I said, I've come down here carp fishing. It's difficult in the winter, and I've caught one. And I'm really pleased with it. I said, and plus the fact that 14-pound carp doesn't know he's not 50-pound, You might think he is, but, so for me, it's catching carp, it's, and I always fish. There's only 2 fish I've ever got obsessed with, but other than that, I'll fish for as many bites, as many as I can catch, And I hope that a big one comes along the way. And if you're lucky, that's where the lucky side of fishing comes into it sometimes, isn't it? Where it's a little bit skillful to fish for carp, but most times it's you can't pick and choose what picks up your bait, can you? Unless you're stalking or.
No, but you're very good at. You've caught a few big ones in your time, mate, haven't you? So take that look if it is luck, but I think there's a bit more to it than that, mate.
Yeah,
You've put
maybe,
in whatever aspect it is that works for you, whether that be bait or just being in the right areas or angling well, mate. It all adds up, I think. One maybe is lucky, but if you do it time and time again, it's a bit more than luck, in it, mate.
Possibly, yeah.
Going back to sort of the end of that chapter with your sort of progression, Darenth, etc. Before we move on to a fish that really sort of you captured, that brought you into the limelight, so to speak, your times with those various characters that were around there, what was the social side of stuff like with them outside of being on the bank? Did you become good mates with them all? Like Paul Forward, I know you spent a lot of time with.
Brilliant. I mean, to be honest with you, I've always been involved with, when I first started carp fishing, one of my ambitions was to be, a BCSG member.
Yeah.
It was like an elite, you'd made it, when you, if you got to be a member of the BCSG, you'd made it,
Yeah.
You'd arrived. And I was a regional organiser. Myself, Alan Smith, was for the Kent and South East London region for a few years. I was a regional organiser for the Kent and South East London for 7 years with a guy called Richard Lovett with the Carp Society, and you should, do slideshows at conferences and things like that. But so it was around, good mates, and there's a few of them that you sort of they're close friends. Like in particular, fishing friends wise, it's like the likes of Paul Forward, who's a tremendous angler.
Yeah,
my mate Rod Killick, again a good angler. Dave Woods, albeit I don't speak to Dave very often, but he's still doing it, and out there doing it. Lockie, he's still catching them, still enthusiastic, and I forgot one. Oh, Leroy Swan. That's a name you don't hear very often, but Leroy, he's such a respected sort of fisherman and a successful fisherman, But that's all. Although I don't speak to Leroy much now, but them few, there's probably others that I forgot about, and I apologise again to anyone who are watching it, But
funny stories, funny socials. What do you remember from days sort of back then? Anything sort of prominent come to mind?
Oh yeah, but, I don't know.
I can imagine it'd be quite lively.
Yeah, it was quite. I mean, it was quite lively on the. Huge and in a drunken state at the end of the night. Really, most of the laughs and all that, and it's. Loads of good time, especially when I fished Conningbrook as well. Conningbrook was
good social scene.
Conningbrook was I would still say to this day, it's the best lake I've ever fished for 3 reasons: the lake itself, or maybe 4 reasons: the camaraderie on the bank, and obviously you're fishing for the biggest carp in the UK, and the swum around, but the socials between the anglers who was regulars on the lake, it was always. I mean, to be honest with you, it wasn't a night water, as Conningbrook. So the evening we used to congregate and have some great socials. Like, I had parties in. There's an house on the lake, Joe's house. He's moved from there. And he actually unfortunately died last year, and he used to invite us in there, have a bit of a party in the house and everything. But no time did a carp ever get damaged. But it was craziness. People walking on the barbecue with bare feet and things like that, or having a swimming race across the lake. full of beer and wine and everything, and crazy time, good times, and then there was a serious side, and everyone, if anyone ever caught a fish, people were generally pleased, and
I always find that a mega contrast. Like you've got like all the romanticism and stuff about some of the finest, like pinnacle, historic fish in the land. Then you've got like the sort of culture that was like getting drunk, leaving the rods out, and then coming back and catching them. And it's such a polar opposite, like sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's got to the stage where it is a problem on some lakes, I think, even now, Do
you think?
I think so, yeah. It's, it's much more, you look at it, I mean, drugs are much more used now, and sort of some places become accepted. I mean, whether it's right or wrong in the first place, I mean, Savvy. I mean, I was never a Savvy syndicate member, but, I love the old stories of, like, Rod Hutchinson, if you've seen him with that hat on, that was the hat. And it'd get dark and the hat had come on, and that was, I'm going to the pub.
Yeah.
So everyone followed, and so they go up the, leave their rods out and go down the Olsen Barge or the fisheries before that, or the Olsen Barge just up the road mainly. And then come back and have a good time. But I don't know. It's wrong what they was doing, but it was fun at the time, and it's different, And I don't know of any carp sort of dying because of that sort of behaviour, and
different times, mate. Things move on, and it is what it is. But like you look back, and it's a crazy sort of paradigm.
But when you get a stage, but that everyone on the lake was involved, but if you get you get sort of some of these waters now, and lakes have got so much more busier now, and there's so many more people carp fishing, and So it is a different beast, and people, if you had the party in like we had back then, or the pub going, and it wouldn't work,
Yeah,
and a lot of clubs now ban alcohol.
Of course they ban it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But it's but having said that, as a recovering alcoholic, that wouldn't have made any difference to me. I would still find a way of getting it.
Would you?
I would. Oh yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, you speak to any addicts. You can't tell any addicts that he can't do this or he can't do that. Whether it be drink, drugs, or whatever, they'll find a way of doing it.
How did that play out for you then? How did that become? Was that part of the fishing sort of scene? Was that part of? How did that actually come in? I mean, that's a very personal thing that I'm asking you. So you don't need to talk
really.
about it.
It's just I don't know really. It's I mean, alcohol wasn't a problem for me for years.
Yeah.
I used to occasionally get drunk, but every time I did have a chance to drink, I normally got drunk. I normally got drunk, fell over, was sick and everything. And so
it's like all or nothing.
Yeah, and I think but I think most of it was sort of. Most of all that was when I was, I was fishing day only waters or fishing, not doing sessions or anything like that, and so and I value my driving licence, so I wouldn't drink and drive and all that, and I think when you start fishing lakes like Conningbrook, and there's a big social aspect, and you're fishing, you're all in the same boat, you're fishing. Ever so difficult, the lake. I can't explain how difficult it was. So you'd all gather together and have order an Indian takeaway and all that, and a few beers and all that. Well, it started for me with I maybe take a couple of Budweisers fishing me, for a night, whatever. And but pretty soon I got the taste of red wine, and
is it red wine?
And my problem is I drink everything fast.
Yeah,
and so I'll drink a pint of red wine as quick as you could drink a pint of
squash
beer, squash or whatever. And it really progressed from there. But I think it's the person who's going to become an alcoholic or a drug addict. It's a physical thing, It's all about endorphins.
Yeah.
Like that thing. When I was drinking, I used to always think. That point when you're having a drink and you feel happy, You know, and like a temperate drink, because I can get home from work and think, I'll have a couple of beers with me dinner or a couple of glasses of wine, and that's it. Someone who's an alcoholic, one beer is never enough. 1,000 beers is never enough. 6 bottles of wine is never enough. It's just one you have to, and I haven't had a drink since reading this bit of paper that said on an AA meeting that said it's the first drink that done the damage. And I thought, oh yeah, you know, because that made so much sense.
Yeah.
And I didn't know I was an alcoholic. Didn't think I was, but, you know, I didn't know what an alcoholic was.
What was that? Was there not a moment of realisation where you thought like something's got to give, or no?
Not
Nothing
really.
like that? No.
Not really, no. It's, well, yeah, it was. But then it might be that evening, you know, you know, you was, you know, I went fishing or not fishing. I went to bed drunk every night, apart from a couple of occasions, you know, but and there was always the aspect of, you know, drunk to some extent or another. Like, you know, someone paralytic drunk, you know, I can't walk or anything, because I'm a bit like Bammy on ice when I get drunk. You know, my head works of sorts, but my legs don't. You know, and it just got too much, and I used to think, oh shit, I'm going to pack this up tomorrow, and so there was a moment of clarity there. You know, that's just that thought, a moment of clarity. The next day, you forgot all about it. You forgot all the insanity of it. Is like having your head in the evening before. You got your head down the toilet, being sick, or you pissed your sleeping bag again when you're fishing. You know, but by the time the next morning comes, you forgot all about that. And then so the next sort of day, I get home from work, and I just have a glass of wine. End of. Over and over
repeats,
again. And it just and that's what it is. Yeah, it's you know, it's an awful, you know, and I think the realisation that it's a problem. The thing is, I mean, a man who I won't name his name, unfortunately he's dead now. He was a very good friend. 15 years before I got sober, we was in France fishing. And in the winter time, it was difficult fishing, and I was having a great time. My Wellington boots were melting on the fire and everything, like having a great time, like knocking back the wine and everything. And I said to this person, "Don't you drink?" He said, "No." He said, "I haven't drunk for 15 years." And I said, "Oh right, okay." My head says, "Poor sod, you don't know what he's missing."
Yeah,
you know. And then he mentioned something about AA, and which I took no notice of. I just felt sorry for him because he didn't drink. And then he said something like, he goes 3 times a week. So I said, what, you still go? He said, yeah. He said, I have to, you know. And I thought, whatever for, you know. I know that man was passing me the message because he could see that I was potentially an alcoholic, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I got a lot to thank that man for it. And I went into AA. I took my daughter, who was a chronic alcoholic at the time, far worse than me, and I thought I'd go in that room and see, you know, men tied up with a raincoat, tied up with a bit of string and all that. But there's ordinary people, you know.
Yeah,
quite well dressed and everything, you know.
You've done incredibly well,
the bit of paper on the tape, that's what done it.
Yeah.
A bit of paper that said it's first string that does that. That made so much sense because the next day I was going to always pack it up. I'd have one and then was drunk again.
You know? But that you've done incredibly well. How many years sober now, mate?
9 years last week. Yeah,
I saw you put the post up. That's incredible work.
Yeah.
From that.
Yeah.
Like, fair play to
it's you know, it's a lot of people don't know they got their addiction until they and you know, and you can't. I can't keep anyone else sober. I can only tell them my experience, you know. And because if someone wants a drink, they'll have a drink. If they want a drug, they'll have a drug, you know. If
But fair play, it takes a lot, mate. And there's a lot of people that obviously go down that cycle and they don't come out the other side of it and never have that sort of clarity.
Yeah, it's surprising how many people die of it.
Exactly.
Especially alcohol. It's
yeah.
It doesn't say on the death certificate he died of drinking vodka. It says like something else. Yeah, it's a alcohol related death.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Well, mate, you got a lot to be proud of there, mate. Like that's an incredible feat, regardless of whatever else. Let's go back to a significant fish from the Colne Valley, not from Kent. A 40-pounder, an unknown 40-pounder.
Yeah.
That fish very much sort of put you sort of, not that you weren't already because you're associating with people, but put you sort of in the limelight, didn't it?
I think so, yeah. I mean, it's... that wasn't on purpose. It just happened like that in the limelight, and... I mean that year I was fishing with me Essex lakes, like Essex mates, and I was going to be doing that's when it was a close season, and I was going to be doing fishing a lake near Aveley in Essex called the Tunnel, and there was one big fish in there. I fished it the year before a bit on and off, like short sessions. I think there was probably only about 3 carp in there, and the following year, like in the close season, this was now 1983, I was going down there baiting, 2 or 3 times a week, and then just before the season started, the club lost the fishing rights, so and I was devastated, and I just didn't know where I was just didn't know where to go, and a good mate of mine, Alan Partridge, was round. He was a builder. Was out round helping me with a patio and all that, and he mentioned this lake in the Colne Valley that they'd fished. I don't know if you remember the SBS bloke, Martin Cowell.
Yeah.
I mean, because Martin was in a wheelchair, I think, and he needed someone to take him fishing and that. So Alan took him a couple of times to this lake and in the Colne Valley, and I don't think Alan caught anything, but Martin caught, I think, a 24-pounder both times he went, and I think they spoke to Mike Wilson and he'd said to him, there's some big fish in here, and anyway, he told me about this lake, and he said we've all joined it, Jimmy Burns and the others and whatever, and I thought perhaps I might join it, and so I rang up the club secretary. Bear in mind, I live in Gravesend at the time, and this lake is the other side of. There's no M25. It's the other side of London, near. I suppose the nearest place people would have heard of would be Rickmansworth.
Right,
top of the.
What year is this, Lee? Roughly
1983.
83.
And so it was only about 3 days before the season started on June the 15th. There was no night fishing on there, by the way, and I rang up the club secretary. I think Henry Peplow, I think his name was, and I rang him up and give him all the old bullshit, like I'd like to join your lake. I like a bit, but I've heard there's some good bream in there, and
because you didn't like carp anglers, did they?
Well, I don't. Yeah, you always said that anyway. If you tried your luck, didn't you? And I said, oh, okay, son. Yes, some good bream in the lake, he said, and some very good bream, he said, and he said, where do you live? I said, I live in Gravesend. Oh, that's a long way to go, isn't it? And come, he said, well, you drive all that way to. I said, well, no, I work. This was a little lie. I said, well, actually, I work over that area quite often. I go fishing after work. Like, okay, son. He said, send me off your £8 and your £2 joining fee, and you remember,
Result.
So that's it, and so I joined, and I say this was 2 or 3 days before the season started. I went there on June the 15th and had a walk round, and the water was pea soup green colour. You couldn't, no clarity in whatsoever, and so I was walking round. There was it's quite a big lake, about 34 acres in total, and the open end of it, you've got islands at one end, and the open end of it, I'm looking, and I thought, there's a seagull standing on the lake, 80 yard out, like,
Brilliant.
obviously it was, and then I remember then Kevin Ellis turned up and Jimmy Burns turned up and all that, and we all walked around together. And I always remember Kevin getting a brand new lead. He'd made it himself, I think. It was all shiny and everything, and having a little cast around with a rod. He had one cast with that rod, and it came back like a lump of shrapnel. All painted and everything.
Bars everywhere.
So obviously there was bars everywhere.
Yeah.
And I chose a swim where there was about 70 yards out, there was a branch sticking out, like a stick of a branch that's sticking out the lake. So I thought, well, that's a good place to start, you know. Obviously, it was a branch that blown down in the close season and got lodged on this bar because that's a good marker for, you know. So so that's where I decided to fish. When the season started the next morning, because you weren't allowed to fish, you know, until about 4 a.m, something like that, and that was it. And we didn't have a clue what was in the lake. I think little Peter caught one. I think it was about 17. It's either 17 or 21 pound. Little Peter caught one, and then about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I had this bite, and at first there was some tufted ducks out there, and you know, I thought, well, it was definitely a carp, you know, and because of the clarity of the water, it was literally like pea soup. You couldn't see anything like it. It was only when I think Jimmy Burns netted it. He netted it, you know, with a landing net, and there it was. It was the biggest carp I'd ever seen on the bank.
That's ridiculous.
We weighed it, and it was £40 4 ounces, and
in 1983,
£40 4 ounces, I think it was in 1983, and it just blew us away, you know, because we just didn't know what was in the lake. You know, there could have been, and I can remember once everyone, you know, all the pictures done and everything, everyone melted back to their swim, and I can remember Jimmy used to always gesture with his arms, like, you know, and he said there might be 50 pounders in here, you know, and we didn't know. So it was, and as it turned out, that was undoubtedly the biggest fish in the lake, you know, and
right.
And it was so exciting, you know, the fishing on the lake, because you just didn't know what was in there. You know, I continued fishing it until about September. Then I moved over to the Tip Lake, you know, local lake. You know, It was quite aggro getting into this lake. I mean, you couldn't night fish it, and the drive from where I lived was about 70 miles. Then you got to pack up at. It was an hour before. Then it was an hour after sunset, or an hour before sunset, or something like that. You had to
that's hard work, isn't it?
Yeah, it's hard work, hard fishing, you know. And occasionally I'd stay up for 2 days and sleep in the car or something overnight, you know. And but it's hard work. It's a lot harder than sort of sleeping in the bivvy. Yeah. And because you've got to pack it all up in the morning, pack it all up at night, take it back to the motor, and then go back the next morning. And but it was better than going home. But yeah, so I enjoyed a lot of the fishing on. I really enjoyed fishing that. But I fished it till September. I had a couple of day ticket in September. I had a couple of day ticket. I had a particular day ticket visit to Save. I had an offer of being
on the membership,
a syndicate member. You know, on the second year, the syndicate was on there, but I couldn't warrant because I was so short session angler. I couldn't warrant it, you know.
Of course.
And I went over there in the September and for I think I'd done 4 or 5 days, like sleeping in the car overnight and then fishing by day, and I managed to catch a couple of fish and lose one, you know. And
that's a result, that is.
Yeah, it was a result. Yeah, and it's you know, funny enough, I think it was the method I was using that made the difference, because at the time most of the survey anglers was because it was predominantly long range fishing,
casting. Yeah.
They're using big baits and everything, so they can cut and pull them out that far and everything. And I decided to go completely opposite. I would just use single free offerings, but I would use 3 little pop-ups, you know, on the air. You know, 3 little, you know, I suppose 10 mil pop-ups.
Yeah.
And that seemed to make the difference. Again, you know, I think, you know, when I first used double baits, it was like a new rig, because it's a different feeling. The carp hasn't got hands, has it? You know, it's got its mouth, and that's basically it, you know.
You do that quite a lot. Do you we just before we started filming and recording, we went up the church, talked to a couple of the anglers on, and you were saying, like, you said to them, like, be mindful about ringing the changes and doing things a little bit differently.
Yeah,
Has that always been a sort of a bit of a feature for you through the course of time?
Really. Actually, if you use, I mean, if you ring the changes around a bit, it does make a difference, because we teach carp, don't we? You know, they don't put a load of chimpanzees round the table, do they? And they drink tea, do they? They teach them, you know.
Yeah, of course.
And we teach carp to be wary of things, don't we? You know, they're much more, and if it keeps doing that and getting caught on that, it ain't going to fall for it again, you know. And so if you can trick them, that's all you got to do, is trick them a little bit, and you know. And when they suck in that bait, if there's two baits on there or it's a funny shape, it might create that millisecond of panic.
Yeah,
and that's what you need. You know, that's all you need. You know.
Nice. How do you go from there? You're sort of, I mean, a 40-pounder in 83 is massive. How does your journey get you to Conningbrook? Because at the moment, a lot of your fishing seems to be, it's not exactly target fishing for a big one. It's sort of just going around and enjoying yourself and getting a few bites, isn't it?
I mean, I predominantly fish that. I mean, to be honest with you, that lake, I mean, I call it Arrow because that's what it's known as. You know? It's not the proper name of the lake. It was Springwood. It was the a spring well, I think it was called, the proper name of the lake. You looked here on an Ordnance Survey map, and I very nearly dropped out of it that year. When it came to 1984, because I'd caught a couple of. By this time, I started fishing Darenth Tip Lake, and for years I'd avoided the Tip Lake because, to be honest, I wasn't. Though I'd fished a lot of waters, I wasn't used to fishing weedy waters. Like anglers are nowadays, you know, especially day ticket anglers, you know, they don't like a bit of weed, you know.
Yeah.
Ain't going there, it's too weedy. And I used to walk past the Tip Lake to fish the big lake. And it's really strange. You've got two lakes next to each other. That one's never got any weed in it, never had any weed in it, and this one's full. Yeah. You know, and I thought to myself, well, do you know what? I've caught, other than that 40 pounder, the best. I mean, the locals never used to like us, so they never spoke to us. You know, so I don't know what the locals caught, but they didn't like us catching fish. That's for sure. And I can't blame them. You know, always they've had the lake to themselves.
A bunch of Kent lads come in.
A bunch of Kent and Essex lads go over there and start catching their fish. Yeah. And then, I very nearly dropped out of here because I fished the Tip Lake a bit that year towards the end of 1983. And I caught straight away. I caught two fish on me first. You know, I just walked up the lake and, you know, and saw these two fish and cast out and caught two. You know, I saw some fish, should I say? And I caught two, and so I started fishing that. So I fished that throughout the winter, and but on Arrow, like, apart from that 40 pounder, the biggest two fish we knew of, other than that, was what little Peter Ridley caught. Right, he caught two 29 pounders. So the next year, when he come up for you know, the membership renewal come up, the only reason I joined it again was it was £8. Do you know what I mean? I didn't have to pay any joining fee or £2, and I would pay it anyway. And that I fished it for sort of something like 13 years. Did you? As well as, like I said earlier, I used to go off and flit off and fish other places, and I used to, you know, but that was my main water, you know. And
how did that change over that course of time? That's a long time, isn't it?
Yeah. It was it's I mean, by this time I was fishing other lakes. I had periods of times when I fished different lakes, like the school pool at Favershams. I used to fish a lot. I loved that place, you know, and I used to do nights as well. But how Conningbrook come about, it was discovered by the year before, a couple of years before, or more than a couple of years before, a few years before. You had Leisure Sport Angling that run the fishing on the Darenth complex and other waters around the country, and initially they was called Leisure Sport Angling, and they changed the name to something else. Well, there's a company that, and most of these lakes are owned by aggregate companies, you know, like Blue Circle or whatever, you know, all the lakes in the Canterbury Ashford area are predominantly owned by a company called Brett's. Brett aggregates, and well, I think they had a idea of setting up an angling scheme like like Ledgerport, and they so as a result of that the Faversham Angling Club lost the lease on like 2 of their waters. Their main water, the school port owned that, so there weren't no problem there. And because those 2 waters, it was the Millpool and the Woodpool, because they was well stocked with carp, quite easy waters. They more so the Woodpool, they took fish out of there to stock them in other waters round Kent, under Brett control, under this fishing scheme thing. And well, the story I've been told, and I believe it to be true, is that there was 17 fish that a guy called Ken Crow had forgot about. They was in the tanks, in the or wherever they were, and he just drops them into an hole in the ground with water in it near Ashford, i.e. Conningbrook, and well, them carp lived a charmed life for a few years until, and this angling scheme fell on its back.
Yeah, it never went anywhere.
Didn't work. It didn't go anywhere, and they were discovered by. By this time, the fishing on there on Conningbrook was shared by the Faversham Angling Club and Mid Kent Fisheries.
Yeah, Mid Kent. Yeah,
and but to be honest with you, most anglers are not very adventurous, are they? They don't sort of look at other places, or they want to fish their waters where they know they can catch
where it's
carp
known.
and all that.
Yeah.
And those carp were discovered by Paul Forward and Phil Lloyd. They was walking around, walking around in the close season, and they saw the first fish they saw was a 2-tone fish, and which was obviously 2-tone, and I can remember Paul on the phone to me telling me about a big common that him and Phil had seen, and he said to me, it's got to be 40 pound this common, and wow, but I didn't think too much of it because then I was fishing Arrow. And Arrow at the time was one of the best lakes in the country, and in its day, and then so I went down and fished Conningbrook a couple of times, and but rock hard. I can remember Paul telling me, like, when he was fishing it. Phil caught 2-tone on the first day of the season when they started, and there was only 2 anglers on the lake. I think they caught it at just under 35 pound.
How big is Conningbrook? What's the size of Conningbrook?
It was about 19 acres. And with more natural food that you've ever seen, and I think that was at the time that was the only carp Phil ever caught out of it. But Paul continued to fish it. And being the angler he is, he managed to catch most of the fish in there, including 2-tone at 35 pound. And I can remember Paul telling me, he said, I think he caught early days. He caught all his fish on tiger nuts,
right?
And he said if you threw 4 tiger nuts in as free offerings, that was too many.
Jeez. He
said the fish would come in and eat one or 2 of them, and then they're gone. There's so much natural food, like snails and all sorts, But when I fished it a couple of times, but to be honest with you, I wasn't really particularly interested in it because it was too hard, too difficult. When you go onto waters like that, you've got to have wanted to catch as many carp as you've ever caught, because you might not get a bite for a year, or more, And I caught one in November. I caught one evening in I was doing a night, and I caught one in November, a common of 16 pound. There was only 19 fish in there. Sorry, 17 or 19 fish in there.
What did you catch that on?
I caught it on a Jacko pop, I think.
Was it?
Yeah.
And about the Jacko pops, mate.
Yeah. But then, so I weren't particularly interested. But 2-tone, season by season, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. Ian Brown and someone else caught it the following year. I think Brownie at the time, when he had it about 42 pound, it was a new Kent record, and then it just crept up and up and up. But when the time when it really became of an interest, and I never went back there, I never went back there after I think I might have gone once after catching that 16-pounder. And but it was, I can always remember, it was up at I used to do this charity thing for the ACA every year up at, I forget what they call the lake, it's up in Doncaster, Tyreham.
Tyreham, yeah.
Yeah, Tyreham. And the delay at the beginning of it, the thing to start, it's been delayed because of the Princess Di's funeral, Oh,
right.
And it was in the car park, and and all the funeral was going on the television and things like that. And Terry Earn, he said to me, Jacko, he's in his car and he's talking to someone on the phone. Jacko, he said, some bloke called Rod Killick has just caught two-tone at 50 pound 4 ounces. And I was punching the air.
Yeah.
Unbeknownst to Terry, Rod was one of me
good mates,
mate, and still is, one of me good mates, so I was delighted. That was a game changer for me, because at last I didn't mind travelling for me fishing too much, but at last I had it was I couldn't have fished Raisbury at the time, because I couldn't have warranted I couldn't have done the time that it needed, but at last I had a water in Kent that held a 50-pound carp, and that's when so rod catching that fish at over 50, that's when my obsession began with the lake, really.
Would you say that was the first fish that you really got obsessed / targeted? And
prior to that, it was she on the school pool, because I used to fish the she. I used to do ever so well on the school pool. Amounts of fish I caught, and I caught lots of fish right from when I first started fishing it. And she was one of the. I mean, make no mistake about it. She was one of the most famous carp in the country. Certainly the most famous carp in Kent, and it appeared on Kevin front cover of his Carp Fever.
Carp Fever, that's
and so it's I forgot where I was going with that one, but it so she was the big one in the school pool, was probably one of the easiest carps to get to catch, but I could never catch it, and it took me ages, before I caught it. I mean, I think that's where I first met Paul Forward.
Right.
And I always remember I was doing a day session, I was on a swim called The Point, and I think I'd had 2 or 3 fish, and this northerner come sort of bounding onto the point, and there was something different about him. I seen, I'd seen a lot of confident anglers in my Darenth days and things like that. This guy was ultra confident, and he obviously knew what knew what he was doing, and we became good friends. I think he caught she at that point about 11 times, and but when that was the first fish I targeted. And when I eventually did catch it, it was I'd done a stupid thing though when I first caught it. It took me a long while to catch it. And it was part of a 5-fish catch, on a day session, and I think it was about the third one I caught. And I can remember netting it, and I knew what fish it was, so it was in the landing net, and I weighed it. I think it was 36.5 pounds, something like that. And then I'd done a stupid thing, really. It didn't seem stupid at the time. There was a young lad there, because all my mates were in. Away in France fishing, all my local mates to that I had no one to ring up to do photos or anything like that. So, and it suddenly dawned on me, I thought, because I've always been, if I catch a big fish from a lake, especially if it's a target fish, I lose interest in that lake.
Yes,
because I like the lake, I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put it back without a photo. So I just dropped it in the lake. Without a photo, with the idea being I've got to come back with my photo, which enabled me to carry on fishing it. I mean, this 14-year-old boy, he thought I was absolutely lunatic.
Mental,
It must have been the next day I thought I was. No, but I went on to catch it 3 more times as it happens after that. But
you enjoyed your time on that lake.
Yeah. But no, so two-tone was. There's only 2 fish I've been obsessed with catching. Is that and she and two-tone.
And two-tone, obviously, it went over 50 pounds. It was caught. That sort of was the I don't know, the spark, if you like.
Yeah, yeah.
And then going back on there for it, how did you sort of try and attempt to sort of catch? Because it's rock hard, isn't it? You said
it was rock hard. It was rock hard fishing, and I mean, I didn't only fish there. I mean, people think it takes you so many years to catch a fish, but I used to go home and fish, flip out, because but when I got serious on it, I just done what I normally do. Fish for as many carp as I catch, and I can catch, and obviously the one I hoped for was to catch was two-tone, I got a feeling there was an occasion when I lost it. And
really?
There was one night in a swim called the Sign Swim, and it's quite deep water and everything. And I had this bite, I think it was about midnight in darkness, and I had a feeling all the time I was playing that this is a real big fish, and all of a sudden it weeded me up. So I had to run along to Ghosty Trees, the next swim where the boat was, and I put the boat on my back and I run back to the lake, run back to my swim, threw the boat in, and I jumped in the boat and got out above it, and and it was weeded solid, but I could still feel it now and again, and I'm convinced that was two-tone, and all of a sudden the hook pulled out of it, and.
But you didn't see it, no?
Didn't see it, no. But I was just convinced.
But
I felt it was, but it weren't meant to be, was it? But the funny thing is, the next morning, when I went to take the boat back up, I could hardly lift it. The night before, I'd adrenaline.
Yeah.
I was just, and but no, I was fishing but really, I was sick and tired of the place. I loved the place. And I loved the camaraderie and the friendships and the lake itself and all that. But I was fed up. I thought, do you know what? Am I ever going to catch this fish?
Yeah, was it a bit of a burden? Yeah,
it was. Yeah, especially when, I'm not a jealous person, but I can be very envious, And there's a difference between the two, I think. And when it was caught, it was like someone had pulled my heart out, and
Did you? How many times did you see it on the bank? Did you see it a couple of times on the bank?
I can't remember. No, I think I only could see it once on the bank. I think when I only saw it once on the bank.
Did you?
I actually saw it once on the bank. That's when I had the privilege of seeing the first 60-pound carp caught in the UK by Gary Bass.
So you saw Bassies, did you?
Yeah, I was up. He swims away from him,
he could record you in the story.
Using plastic sweet corn or something like that, and and the method, I think, and Gary had it on a boilie, and and it was great occasion. It's I can remember Gary. The Gary being. Before that, I saw Terry Earn catch it.
Did you see Tail catch it?
Yeah, Terry. I was on there for a Sunday night. Before work and work next morning, and Terry was in a swim called Joe's Point, and I went in a swim called the Sign Swim, and when I woke up in the morning, it was a really thick fog, real pea super and all that, and it dampened everything, and I can remember walking past Terry, and but I thought, if he's got any sense, he'd be in his sleeping bag. And so I just carried on going. I got to work, which was 45 miles away, and I got a phone call from Terry. I've got it. I've caught it. So can you come back down? I said, yeah, I'll be straight back down there. And I went back down there, and that was Terry's, I think, second 50-pound plus carp.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, and. And no, not £50. 50-pound plus carp, wasn't it? Yeah, you had Mary at, I can't remember what weight it was, and that was your second 50. Well, mind you, I always remember I weighing it, and I was looking at the scale. I was reading the scales, and Terry was outside it, and I'm going, it's 49, 10, and he's looking at me, he's 49, 12, and he's like, really, I know pounds of that just don't really work, really matter, but they do, don't they?
Yeah, of course.
And I said, okay, it's £50 4 ounces, I think it was, you know. And so it's great to see Terry with it, and you know, another one of his shopping list, you know.
Yeah, tell Basie.
Then, but when Basie caught it, you know, it was, he went out to go out in the boat because the fish weeded him up and all that, and you know, and
wasn't that a night? Was that a nighttime capture?
Yeah.
It
was certainly dark. It was October the 11th rings a bell, and that would have been 2001.
He's done his podcast on it. I remember he recalls you said something to him in that, and he recalls that in the story. If you haven't seen that podcast, go back and watch it. Yeah. What a fish, mate! Yeah,
and I can remember him coming ashore, and I was the one who took the net, you know, off me off the boat, like, you know, and I'm looking down at that fish, and it was sending shivers down my spine.
Yeah,
it might not be the best looking carp in the country, but it's certainly
a kipper,
one of the most impressive to look at, you know.
Yeah, £60, ridiculous. Obviously, when you were fishing for it, subsequently, because I know it was a bit of a bird, and you said you were sort of thought you would ever catch it, and you were a bit sort of disheartened with the place. But was the fact that it could be a potential British record a factor of keeping you going or not?
No, it was the biggest carp in the country.
Yeah,
you know, biggest known carp in the country. That was really it. The record side of it was a bonus.
Yeah.
You know, all I wanted to do was catch that carp. Absolutely obsessed with catching that carp. But the trouble is, when I analysed it, I fished it all wrong. You know, because I was there was only 20. There was now 23 carp in Conningbrook, because you had what become given the name the friendlies. You know, there's a friendly mirror, friendly common, and little friendly common. And the reason they got that name, when they got, you know, they introduced in the lake, they was the most caught carp in the lake, and but then they learnt, you know, and they become equally as hard as the others.
But
having said that, the friendly mirror was quite friendly with me. I caught it 4 times, you know, and but though there was 23 carp there or thereabouts, 23 carp in Conningbrook, sometimes you think there was 223.
The
showing like mad.
That's,
you know?
what everyone said. Yeah.
Yeah, and consequently, I'll be working fishing for the showing fish, you know. And again, me little Jacko pops used to do the tricks, like, you know. And by Conningbrook standards, I've done pretty well.
How many bites do you have in total?
I would normally get 6 bites in the spring.
Jeez.
You know, and yeah, there or there about 6 or 7 bites. And
that's unbelievable, isn't it?
It doesn't sound a lot, but it is a lot when it comes to Conningbrook. You know, when you consider like some people and good anglers as well. I mean, me and Paul Forward used to talk to each other. Sometimes it'd be, you know, it'd be sort of October or September or something, and Paul would say to me, "When's the last one you caught out of here?" Like, you know, and we're fishing it regular, and I said, "Well, I think it was last May."
Jesus.
And he said, "Yeah, same as me." You know, and it's so difficult. You know, you can't explain how difficult it was. You know, you just have to keep going. I mean, because it was that early period, that early spring, and I still think that's the best time of year for most productive. You know, not like now. It's April, isn't it? You know, this sort of time of year is the most productive. You know, and so in the spring you'd catch them on pop ups or whatever. But come the middle of June, you know, in normal UK weather, the natural food would be so
abundant.
Abundant. They very rarely used to eat boilies, and you have to wait till September to catch them on boilies again, really.
Jeez.
And but that last year, I'm talking about the 2002 now. That last year, you know, the year 2001 Gary caught it, 2002, I made a plan before I thought about my fishing on there. I thought, you know what, I'm fishing it all wrong. I'm fishing for the crowd, you know, those, you know, all the time, and I'm not, and I've possibly lost 2-tone once. So I made my mind up there and then, early that year, that I'd do one of 3 things. I would, irrespective of what I saw You very rarely saw a two-tone in the edge. You know, it was always a fish that was out in the lake. I only ever saw it. I think I only ever saw it jump twice. You know, and in all my time there, but I only ever saw it once in the edge. And mind you, I'm not as observant as some of the lads on there. You know, they see it a few times, but not many times. But it was never with a crowd. You know, so I made my mind up. I would do one of three things. I would concentrate on 3 swims. One swim was Joe's Point, and the other swim the Island, and the other swim the Life Buoy, which was the 3 swims that produced that fish the most over the years.
Yeah.
But I take the Life Buoy out of that equation because really my two favourites out of them swim was the Island and Joe's Point. So I would fish them as much as I could, irrespective of what I see, you know.
Even if they were showing right down
the middle. Yeah, take no notice of them, you know, because two-tone wouldn't have been there, you know.
Yeah.
It weren't. It used to knock about with a fish called scaly quite a bit, which was around about 27 £, but that was...
It was normally
that was his only friend, you know. And I was maybe mind up. I'd only fish one of the 3 swims as much as I could. But obviously, I got down on some occasions when I couldn't fish. Couldn't get a swim I wanted. And in the springtime, I would use my Jacko pops. You know, I mean, I'd given Jacko pops to 2 people in the lake, and they both caught two-tone on it before I caught it. You know.
No way.
Yeah, one a guy from Matt from Crawley area and Mike Redfern, you know, Spug. You know,
yeah.
I'd give them both before I caught it. You know, and then so I'd use my pop-ups, which the yellow pop-ups, which I've been consistent with in every spring, and then but come the middle of June, I would use something different. You know.
Oh, what would you use?
But I didn't know what to use at that point, you know. And then what sort of... And so, anyway, that year I had a shit spring. I caught one fish. I caught one 17-pounder, I think. And, you know, it just weren't working. I'm thinking, shit, like, this ain't going to plan, you know. Because normally I'd caught 6, you know.
Yeah.
6 or 7. And it was at some point in... So I can't remember what I was using in like June and whatever, but there was some point in, I think it was July probably, where my mate Leroy Swanner I mentioned earlier, he came into the tackle box, and right next to the tackle box there's a co-op dairy, you know, and Leroy was going to take his young son for his first ever fishing trip, like, you know, and he said, I've liquidised a load of old bread up like, for ground bait for him and all that. And that sort of, I thought back to my childhood. When I was young, like, you know, I'd never had no money, not enough pocket money to buy ground bait. But there was always plenty of bread was a cheap thing then, you know, and there was loads of bread in the house, like, you know, because your mum and dad or nana would used to buy it because it filled you up, you know. And I used to, so what I used to do, I used to liquidise bread up. When I say liquidise, you put it in a full food blender, so it, you know. So I thought, I don't know. So Leroy went off, and I went in the co-op next door and bought, I think, a loaf of cheap King's Meal, you know, and ground it up in the food grinder thing, and I pushed it into the quarter, the bigger quarter.
Like a stick.
Yeah, bags, like, you know. Yeah. Stockinette ones, you know. And now you had a thing about that long, and that sort of, you know, whatever the biggest diameter is. And I put it in the sink. When the PVA dissolved, it went poof, and it absolutely, you know, Christ, like, you know, look at that. And I tried, and I thought, that's got to work, you know. Because in Conningbrook, there was no nuisance fish as such. There weren't no... Was
there not any bream or...
No, the only nuisance fish in there was pike, you know.
Really?
If you use anything to do with fish meal, like, you get a bite off a pike.
Would they have the body? Yeah, literally.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you look at a fish meal still giving the same signal. It's a ground up fish in it, you know. So the first time I thought, this has got to work on Conningbrook. It's ideal. And the the first time I used it, I couldn't deliberate what hook bait to use, because the week before there's a guy called Tom Banks on Joe's Point, and he was using maize, free offerings as well, and he had the carp all over him, but he just couldn't get a bite. So that put me off of maize, and so that first time I used it, I couldn't make me mind up what I was going to use as hook bait, But by this time, I changed it a little bit. I put additions to it as well as, my session for I used to do get away from work a little bit earlier on the Wednesday, fish Wednesday night, all day Thursday, and go back to work Friday morning, and then I'd perhaps do a Sunday night as well. And but my mix for that longer session was two loaves of wholemeal red and one loaf of white, and they're all ground up and to that I'd add a small tin of Jolly Green Giant sweet corn, just a small tin, but dried off a little bit so it don't melt the PVA. Half a pint of casters and some chili flakes, and I think carp love chili. And
yeah. So it wasn't just a straight bag of bread then at all?
No. So it was that, and I did later on. I used. There was always periods where you get a lot of little tiny snails on Conningbrook and the weed and all that. I'd pick all them up and put some of them in it as well, And the second time, the first time I used it, all I caught was a skinny eel, And it's another story. Me and Paul. I was away from me rods, taking to Paul Forward, and I had this, and we was both drinking as well, and I had a bite, and I was convinced it was two-tone. And I'm running like man, and Paul's getting in front of me, and I'm pulling him back and all that, and and I picked the rod up, and this is skinny eel.
Oh no!
And I was so annoyed I bit it.
You bit the eel?
Yeah, I bit the eel. Yeah. Which I probably wouldn't have done if I hadn't had a drink, I wasn't drunk. Shit, don't get me wrong, I weren't, paralytic or anything like that, And but after that, I thought, the next session, I decided I will use. I thought myself, it doesn't really make any difference what I use as hook bait, because I'm using sweet corn in the thing. Basically, maize is hard sweet corn, so I might as well use a hook bait. So that next session, I caught my first one on that method, And what I do, these sticks, because I'm using the crust as well, if you initially throw that PVA bag in the lake, it'll float.
Right.
But then after about a minute, it'll sink, So what I was doing, I was actually baiting up by casting them into position. So I'd do that rod, cast it in position, put that on the rod breast, do the next one, and then the third one, and then go back to the first until I had
a little pile.
Wasn't a little pile.
Was it loads?
You me when there was one of those sticks would cover an area of 8 foot.
What? Because when it opened up, it just out.
And you got all bits of like semi-buoyant bread and all that, and you got the bits that float to the surface and your casters and everything. It absolutely decorated the weed, And so what I do, I'd get 4 into place around each rod, and then the fifth cast
was staying,
and I
all on like firm spots. You said you referenced like the weed there, but all in.
There wasn't firm spots until after a while, when I found this little spot on Joe's Point in particular, where it was sometime before I'd put a load of hemp out there, chili hemp,
Okay.
And it wasn't really a spot where other anglers used to fish from that swim, and only close in quite deep water as well. And but I noticed I put about 5 kilo of hemp out there, chili hemp out there one day, and those fish visited that spot every morning for about 2 weeks. I was standing in the swim and looking around there and
see them
bubbling. And I think what it is, chili is such a strong spice that I think it actually impregnates the lake bed. Yeah. And but they kept visiting it, these carp, And so I think I was leading to say, but but no, it decorated a great big area as this, and then I think I caught something like another thing I used to do as well. Though I'm doing the day, feeding time was just before first light to just after first light, and that was it. So what I would do, I would do another baiting. I'd let the morning pass, and then I'd bait up the spots again. But I wouldn't fish. I wouldn't put a line in the water.
Lines out, yeah.
My idea was to give it a chance to, the carps who eye up the dinner table. So when it comes to the time when they want to feed, they knew where to go. You know, and it worked. It works. Most times, if I got in one of those two swims, either the island or the Joe's Point.
Joe's Point, yeah.
Then I got a bite at some point during the session, but it wasn't always possible getting that swims. It was quite popular areas anyway, and then Brett White caught two-tone, I think, at the beginning of August. Can't remember what it weighed, but it weren't quite. I think when Gary Bays caught it, I think it was 70 £60 £60, 2 ounces, something like that.
Yeah, it was just over 60, wasn't it?
Yeah, and Brett caught it, I think, just under 60, I think.
Okay.
So he caught it at the beginning of August, and bless him, and then sort of when Brett caught it, I was very pleased for Brett, but I thought to myself, you know what, when am I going to catch this fish, and it's just not meant to be.
Especially if you're getting bites with the tactic you've just come up with.
I'd had, I think, 6 or 7 carp on the bread method,
That's ridiculous on there.
And
what was your hook bait in the end? Did
maize.
Maize,
yeah, just a single grain of maize, and it got towards the end of September, and I was due to go to France to Le Quay on the Saturday or Friday evening or whatever. I can't remember what it was, and I wasn't even going to fish. I wasn't even going to bother fishing that week, but Wednesday came, and I thought, what, I might as well go, and normally do, and my heart weren't in it at all, I just turned up at the lake. I went on the island. And fishing, I had no interest. Unbeknownst to me at the time, it was probably the first day for a few years that two-tone entered my head. I didn't think about it once, And when I got to the lake, it was almost all baiting up by autopilot,
Yeah.
And then and I remember sort of. One rod, I'd nearly finished baiting all 3 rods. Then I accidentally picked a rod up that was what I'd already done. What was all? And I've just reeled it in, and it was a single grain of maize, and I just cast that out in the lake. I knew roughly where I had to cast it anyway, so they were not far off the target, And considering how much area this spreads like, and that was it. I had a guy called Pet Food Paul. He was former capture of two-tone. He'd come up and spoke to me. He even was chatting about Le Quay because he'd been there quite a lot. And I really had no interest in fishing whatsoever. I give up, basically.
Yeah.
We had to give up, But I think sometimes you catch your target fish. You don't catch the target fish. It catches you, And I can imagine old two-tone swimming around about, Jacko, well, I know I'm special anymore, ain't you going to, And, and that night it got dark and I was in the bag and I woke up to just a single, it's about 5 o'clock in the morning, a single beep, on one of the rods and I sat up on my bed and it was like it was when Terry caught it. It was the thickest fog I've ever fished in, and it was almost eerie. And I heard a fish jump. It sounded like round about one of the baited areas, like, you know, and but it didn't sound a big fish, you know, and it was almost eerie sitting there, you know, sitting there, and you know, because normally you could hear the hum of the M20 motorway, you could hear the factories because they were night working and everything, and but it was silent, completely silent, you know, and almost eerie, and I can remember. I've got a shiver come down my spine.
Yeah.
And I just shivered like that, and all of a sudden...
That makes me shiver.
That rod was a single bait, just melted off. You know, and you know, I was playing the fish, because it was quite weedy at the time, and I was playing the fish really hard, but this fish was just doing what it liked. And at one stage, it went round to the left, you know, almost round the corner of the island, and I was just held on, you know, and managed to get it going well. And no idea it was two-tone. I'll be honest, when you're playing the fish really hard, you're not necessarily aware of how big it was, you know, and like it could have been the friendly mirror, because the friendly mirror was a like 38-pound fish at the time, or one of the other, you know, the long common, which I'd never caught. And eventually I managed to, I got a glimpse of it in the edge. I mean, I didn't have an head torch or anything, it was still dark and really foggy, and I got a glimpse of it, and enough to think to know it was a mirror. And there was another mirror in there called Tom's Pet that I'd never seen on the bank, which was around about 32 pound, and I thought that was probably what it was, you know. And I can remember sort of netting the fish, you know, making the net safe, not really looking at the fish, and going up and getting my head torch and so looking at it. And I thought, my immediate thought was, I haven't got a clue what Tom's Pet looks like, because I haven't actually seen it on the bank, you know. And then it dawned on me, and I can't explain the feeling. I sort of floated up in the clouds.
Yeah.
I floated up in the clouds.
Like out of body experience.
Yeah, and I sort of, you know, and I can remember sitting on my bed chair and sobbing, you know.
Yeah, full tears, yeah.
Yeah, full tears and everything, because it was so emotional, like, you know. By this time, most of the carp world was willing on me to catch it, you know, and it was just magical, you know, and then to ring up, you know, the first person I rung up, because funny enough, coincidentally enough, Colin Davison, he'd written something in the Angler's Mail, in his column in the Angler's Mail, about the 2-3 most
sought after,
three most anglers he respected for some reason, and he mentioned my name, which surprised me. But you know, I think one was Simon Scott, one was me, and one was someone else. And he said, put a comment after mine, when Lee catches two-tone, when Jacko catches two-tone, there's going to be a cue to, you know, as long as England, to shake his hand, you know. And so he was the first one I rung, Colin. And
he works here now, Cole.
Colin Davison?
Yeah.
Did you really?
He's here, yeah.
Blimey. You know, I didn't know that.
Mate, he's put full circle. What a random one. But yeah, top bloke.
Yeah, anyway, he was the one I've rung, and then Paul Forward, my mate Paul Forward, Ian Brown, and yeah, they all came down, and I mean, to be honest with you, there was another guy, Steve Curtin, who was at the time was the British record holder for the barbel, and I used to fish with him on Arrow, and I can remember Steve always used to say to me, I can't wait for your name to be after mine. What he meant by that is like alphabetical.
Yeah.
You know, C is after B, isn't it? You know,
yeah,
on the record list, you know. And I can remember ringing him up. He'd done night work, and it was still early in the morning. You know, I rung up and spoke to his wife, and I said, "Is Steve there, Sarah?" And she said, "No, he's still in bed." She want me to wake him up. I said, "No, don't worry about that." And I said, just put a little sign on the door. Lee rang and said, or tell him, just say two things to him. Lee rang, and his name's after yours. But my phone went mad. You know, my phone actually went mad, and you know, it's you know. And you know, Gary Bates caught it like a year before, And he sent it. I think it was generic text, but he sent it to a few people. But it was one of these that read, it went down to it, and at the bottom of it, it read, "You've just been texted by a fucking legend." And I thought that was great. Like, I kept that, and I sent that around to a few people.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, do you actually? I don't know, because like it is a monumental capture. But do you actually take anything in? Can you take anything at the time when you think back to it? Obviously, the playing of it, the sort of moment of realization, but the sort of, I don't know, the sort of photographing, the whole sort of process of that. Do you take that in, or is it all just a blur? Because it's
just a blur, really. It is a blur. Yeah, really. It's just it's
You find
it's the same. When I caught that 40-pounder in 1983, it's the same sort of thing. You just can't,
quantify anything.
You can't know what's just happened. Like, you don't it takes you a while to,
When did it hit you? Like the magnitude of it, really? Obviously, you see the fish.
I think really what sort of done it for me. It comes up, when everyone melted. I mean, the other lads weighed it, and on the scales it weighed. I've got a real good set of digital couch scales, and it weighed 60 pound. Was it 60? I can't remember. I can't even remember what it was. The weight now, but it was. 60 pound. It weighed 60 pound 12 ounces, and. But when I gave the scale to Colin to take to weights and measures, and he got them, and they was weighing a bit heavy, and at that weight, so it was 60 pound 7 ounces, and
that's irrelevant.
61 pound.
Yeah, because that'll take you over.
That's it. Yeah, and so that was the way of it. But I think when everyone drifted off, I was left to myself, and because I had to get my stuff ready for going to Liquid the next day and all that, I started packing away and everything, and I switched my phone off, and I just couldn't handle the amount of phone calls.
Meltdown,
and it wasn't until I got onto the M20 motorway that I switched my phone back on. Immediately, when I looked at my phone, it was just there was loads of text, and all the way up the M20, going to the tackle box, because actually, even though it was my day off, I still had to get a couple of bits,
get some stuff.
My phone didn't stop ringing or receiving text and everything. And when I got to the tackle box, bear in mind I called it at 5 o'clock in the morning, and it's now 9:30 when I pulled up outside the tackle box, and I looked at my messages, and it was something like 52 messages received, and as well as all the phone calls, And when I went into the tackle box, there was an email from South Africa and one from somewhere else, away, and that's when it sunk in, and I can remember that night, sort of, I had a few glasses of wine that evening. Indoors, but I felt so emotional about it. I sent a text to everyone who texted me, thanking them for making it a sort of special day, and
some achievement, mate, some fish.
And it's but the fact that it was a record weight was the one thing that did annoy me about it though was Gary Bays, it hadn't been recognised that it was a British record at the time.
Yeah.
And I thought that was bad because, in effect, I'd beat his. He didn't get the glory of having
his name. Yeah.
And it was basically because
the processing around it, wasn't it?
It was the British Record Committee were shambles at the time. I mean, they'd have one meeting a year, to discuss all the potential records, like the Grayling record and whatever, and someone's got a dentist appointment at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay, we're postponing it to next year, or 6 months' time or whatever.
Yeah,
and which ain't right, is it? This day and age, even though it was a few years ago now, emails and it can all be done by email.
Done pretty quick.
I always remember when I rung up as well, reported to the record committee. This woman on the phone said, first thing you do is you need to send us a photograph, or send a photograph to the something other Wheeler, his name was. The
Records bloke.
No, one of the museums. I can't remember. Alwyn Wheeler of the National History Museum. That was it. Yeah, a picture.
Well, has he got to verify it?
To verify it's a carp. I said, don't be stupid.
My God.
I said, don't be stupid. I said, everyone knows it. You look at next week's angling papers, everyone will know it's a carp. She said, well, that's just the procedure,
Fantastic.
Another thing I had was when I sent off for the record form, for the application form, record sort of, the witness form and whatever they call it. You had to have a witness for weighing, which was no problem because I didn't weigh it. There was three other guys weighed it, and I might look to the scales, but they read them as well,
Yeah.
And a witness to capture, and there was two other people in the lake. At 5 o'clock in the morning, there or thereabouts. And they was both asleep, and the only person that saw that carp go in the landing, that was me.
Yeah.
So I could have lied, but I couldn't bring myself to lie,
Fair play.
So on the strength of that, I had to go to a commissioner of oath.
What, and swear that you didn't?
I swear on the Bible that I do an affidavit. I swear on the Bible the truth of this. The content of this affidavit is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yeah, I mean,
and they give me a receipt for a fire of them for swearing.
Yeah, mate, mad, yeah. But amazing. What an incredible chapter! The lengths that you went to, your obsession, the sort of, I think the sort of the honesty part of you just giving up and saying, "Oh," and then it's come. Mad.
Yeah.
You find this moment, you find this capture. It's got to be on it. It's got to be up there.
Probably, yeah. Probably that and the what's had most impact on me as a person.
Yeah.
He's two-tone, more so than she. The second was a 40-pounder in 1983.
Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah, fair play.
And but it's just, as I say, you catch what comes along. Sometimes you can't pick and choose what.
I'll take a 60-pounder now, mate.
Well, that's right. Yeah,
you've had a subsequent one, mate, a couple of times, which we'll come to talk about in due course. Now, Lee, in terms of sort of big carp, it doesn't get much better than sort of two-tone, but in a slightly different, I'm going to say, aspect of your carping, match carp fishing or match style carp fishing also came into play. You don't often see many sort of big carp anglers, if you like, differentiate into match fishing. But it's definitely been a feature for you for a while throughout the course of your carp fishing, is getting involved in matches. Where did and how did that all sort of start?
I mean, my match fishing started when I was a young lad. I used to fish, sea fishing matches and freshwater matches and all that. So I always liked it. But for me, carp fishing was like a private thing. I'd never ever wanted to be competing. I only compete with myself, not sort of competing in a match, and I think the first one that started it was when Dave Gawthorne was the manager of Solar Tackle, and Solar were quite big, one of the top, and I got a phone call from Dave, and he said, Lee, he said, we're going to be entering, the Solar's going to be entering the Sonny King Carp Challenge, all sponsored by Sonny and all that. He said, you want to be part of the team for it? It was like the Solar Red Army, Yeah. And I said, no, Dave, it's not really my cup of tea. Match fishing with carp. I've done a bit of match fishing, but I don't really want to do it for carp. And it'd be good fun and all that. And, so eventually I agreed. And because it was a team thing, there was a lot of camaraderie about us, between us all, and basically you fished the qualifier, and then you had to finish in the top three to qualify for the final, and all of us, every single one of the Solar team qualified for the final, and and I got to enjoy it. Like I got to really like it. You know, it was fun. You know.
Where did you fish it? Where was that, mate?
I done my for the Sonny work. I had my qualifier at Brooklands.
Oh, right.
You know, and no, I didn't come. I think Ron Bass come first,
right,
and I come second. You know, and which they would be getting the final. And there was other venues where it was held as well, and so all of the solar team went into the final, you know, and the final was at Horseshoe, and I always remember the final. There was they really made it a big thing, you know, Sonny, you know, because there was a big, you know, chandelier and all this in the. In the lodge, in the lodge where they could sort of have the presentation and the opening thing and all that, and there was a great big, like you see at a race course, like a great big scoreboard, you know, about the fish and all that, and fish caught and everything, and I think there was 39 people in the final. And you had a choice of either going on, I don't know if you know, Horseshoe, but there was one side, the Whitney Bank, the other by the Trout Bank. So each person had the choice of, so should we say there was like 20 swims on either side. You know, so every person, you pulled out the hat, and that's where you fished, but you had a choice of, you had the same number swim on either side of the lake. If you know what I mean.
So you'd pick.
Know, there was a number one on that side and a number one on the other side. And but the problem is, that's all they've done. They just done those sides, you know. So you had all the point.
completely free
and everything, like the road banks, you know, in them days you could fish like the snags. Yeah. You know, and the match started, and you know, beforehand, I formulated a plan that sort of I was going to put more emp than anyone had ever put in there before, you know, and I spent all day, you know,
cooking up your own.
I cooked it all up in readiness, you know, but I put something like 20 kilo of emp.
Oh, you beauty!
About 110 yards out, you know. I was casting further than spotting further than everyone behind me, like, you know, and but it just weren't happening, you know. And then I can remember, because it was barbless hooks, and I've never particularly liked barbless hooks, and a normal circumstance, I would maybe sort of cheat a little bit. I'd sort of maybe just flatten the barb or something like that. And you know, but because it was, people might check, I thought I'd better stay the rules. And I can remember, but the both ends of the lake were free, like, you know. So, and I remember Tim Hodges, who was one of the solar team, catching one. There was quite a big long area. He was at the far end of the trout bank. There's quite a long area between him and the bank, and there was no one there, like, you know. So obviously quite a few fish made their way that way, you know, get out of the way of the.
Yeah. And
Tim caught a 14 pounder, and I think it was about 1-2 o'clock in the morning. I had a bite, and I picked up the rod and was playing the fish. But all the time I'm playing this fish, it looks at about 110 yard out. All the time I'm playing this fish, because the lake was flat calm, and there was all bits of weed hanging over me line, and it was going up and down like that, the line, you know, and eventually it would come out of it. Oh. But it turned out that was the only, for a 48-hour final, that was the only carp that got caught. So I was gutted that you know, worst ways, you know, I would have got second prize, you know. And the chances are I'd got first prize, because 14 pound was quite a small one really for Horseshoe, you know, and you know, considering that amount of 20s there was in it. And
not another bite all final.
No. And this scoreboard had one 14 pounder on it, you know. And so anyway, the solar team won it.
Yeah.
And Tim Hodges won overall, you know. But that sort of gave me the taster of it, and then the BCAC come along and entered that with Gary Pete as a partner, you know, from Tackle Box fame.
Yeah.
And yeah, I enjoyed the competition.
Was it as well as the camaraderie and all that? Was it the venues you were fishing that had to be? I don't know. Did it matter at all about the venues, or was it just the fact that there was camaraderie and there was competition against other anglers? Were they the major factors? Or?
No, I think it was competition.
Yeah, was it?
I fished venues I'd never fished before, and you fish where obviously there's a draw.
Yeah,
so you haven't got. It's not as if you've got this choice of swims. You pick that's where you fish. What you pick out as a draw. So you just got to get on with it and go carp fishing and do the best you can. And but me and Gary was quite successful. Like we qualified to for most finals. And I think I don't know how many years we've done it for. Probably for about 3 years. And the first time I think. No, the first time I fished, I didn't fish it with Gary. I fished it with someone else, and we didn't qualify. Get through. I'm sorry, we didn't catch it. We qualified for the final, but we didn't
do well in the final.
Didn't any good in the final. And then I think it was 2001. Self and Gary, I think we qualified. Yeah, we qualified Wolfram Stone number 1. And we caught loads of fish.
Does that appeal to you, or is it the competition sort of overrides that?
Just want to catch as many. It appeals to you. Yeah, I mean, if you're match fishing, it appeals to you, and if you're doing well, it suddenly matters. If you know what I mean, the competitive side of you comes through. And again, we was catching on. It was Gary. Gary really was the brainwave of that. Us qualifying because he started using jigs. And funny enough, it was Jacko pops with little tiny yellow pop-ups like we was using again.
Jacko pops,
and whereas I was catching them on the bottom, but Gary started using jigs, and they was more successful. Like he was spotting out mixtures to the island and everything, and and we qualified in second place. And I think the two Corder boys, Steve and I forget the other one's name. Steve Spurgeon and I forget whatever his name is. He's Oppo, and we qualified to the final. And the final was at a place called Dovecote, which is right next to Newport Pagnell Services. And I can remember going up there for a practice, and I walked all around. It's quite a big lake, I walked all around the lake, and I fished all around the lake as well. And I sat up till, well after midnight, looking at the water, calm water, and I didn't see a carp. And I was up at first light. I probably got about 3 hours sleep, and I was up just looking at the water, walking about and everything. Didn't see a carp. And I can remember getting back and saying to, I think I spoke to Kev Knight. I said, "You've been up there at Dovecote yet?" He said, "No, not yet." And I thought I spoke to Rob Hughes, and I said to Rob Hughes, I think he's one of the organisers.
Yeah.
And I said to Rob, "I don't think there's any carp in it, mate." And he said, "There's hardly anything in it." And I don't know if he'd even been there himself,
Yeah.
And but the next time I went up, there was carp in every swim. And so it was just on the hiding, and but when the final came, we had a reason. I don't know what the trouble is when you don't know a lake, you don't know what's a good swim.
Of course, you don't. Yeah,
you don't know nothing really about the lake, and we certainly didn't draw an area where I'd fished, when I went up there a couple of times, and. And I think it was. I think I caught 2 on the first, on Friday in the day, and I think there was one other one caught, and then I think Gary caught one as well. But they bring these bulletins round, so what the score is and all that, and it was the second night, the Saturday night, which was the last night. And when I actually said, once I thought, so we got 3 fish, I think, on the scoreboard, and I looked at the thing when I got in my sleeping bag. I thought, I looked at this bloody thing. I think we was only £7 or something like that away from people in first place.
Jeez.
I think we caught two. We caught two that first day, 2 14-pounders, and we was only £7 behind the ones in the lead, and shit, like, you know, I couldn't get it out of my head. I couldn't get £7 out of my head, you know, and I was in the sleep. I just couldn't go. And there was a stick out in the lake, about 120 yard out, and it's pitch black dark, and I got out. I'm casting in darkness. I think near where this stick was, about 120 yard out, you know, and I caught another one, which was another 14-pounder. And so by first light, we was in the lead by about £7, you know, and that's how it remained, and we won it, you know. And
result,
yeah,
mate.
so it was, and it was great. And the tackle box team, you know, because the qualifiers are a team event as well,
Yeah.
you know, and the tackle box team won the team event, so it was a great day for the tackle box and me and Gary as individuals, like, you know. But
Where does that rank in terms of like the satisfaction of winning a BCAC and the satisfaction of catching a big fish? Where's the trade-off?
It's a
there?
different. It's the same feeling. You know, same feeling when there's a very different feeling when you catch a big fish. It's you know, especially if it's one of your targets. It's a special thing. But when you're competing, all you're doing is competing with yourself and competing with the carp, and when you're fishing most of the time, you're not competing against other anglers. Most of the time, you know, in normal carp fishing. But when you're in a match, you're competing against other people. Like, you know, you're in a competition, you know, same way as you race a racing bike round Brands Hatch or a Formula One car or boxing or whatever. You got opposition, and when you win something like that, the pride of standing on the top step of the podium is something you never forget, you know. Our sort of, you know, how it makes you feel, you know, and it ranks equally as high as like the two-tone thing, and or, you know, for in what you have achieved, you know, you just won the British Carp Championship, you know, and it's. I remember all the way home, like, we were in separate vehicles, me and Gary. And Gary had his stereo going out loud. It was with Queen, "We Are the Champions," at full speed, like, you know, at full volume.
Yeah.
And that's how it made you feel like. And to be honest, I was so, his adrenaline was so. I couldn't even go home. I went down to Conningbrook straight from, you know, just done got a couple of bottles of wine and laid there to take it all in, you know, and in the couple of bottles of wine to just soak up the atmosphere, and, you know, and it was great, you know. So it is special, you know, winning them matches. It's not everyone's cup of tea.
No.
Having said that, you find some people's, it's not their cup of tea because they're afraid of not winning.
Yeah, like there's
that, you
reputation
know,
at stake or whatever.
Yeah, reputation at stake, but there's nothing of the kind. You know, it's or for me anyway, there's not. I can understand people feeling like that if I can't win, like, you know, my reputation to go down or something. Oh, yeah, it's a strange one, really.
Yeah.
But I know that'd be the case. And but no, we've done I've done it for a few years, the British Carp Championship, but then all of a sudden there started to be a load more matches turn up, you know.
Yeah.
And it weren't so sort of it weren't so appealing anymore, you know. But prior to the British Carp Championship, however, there was the first Medine World Cup Classic match, and that was. I
was about to say, you didn't just stop at
that was the first. That was before the British Carp Championship, but it was the one we won anyway, and that was exciting because that first year it was. I think it was 1988. I think something like that. There or thereabouts. It was. There was no perhaps, or 1998 was it? Whatever, I can't remember. Yeah, no, that must be, yeah. Forget what I said. It was a shorter duration than what it was. And it was a single smash as well, and like the organisers, they done as well as they could with getting people out to the island, because there's areas on island. There's lots of areas at Medine where you've got to go by boat. You can't get there by land or anything. I
talked about it with Tim. Obviously, we're going to talk about that chapter, but it's quite. I didn't realise the actual logistics of that match on a venue of that scale. It's not like just turning up to a BCAC at Horseshoe, whatever it may be. It's a completely different animal, isn't it?
Oh no, you got to be prepared you might not see your vehicle for a week, or 5 days, because it's parked somewhere over on the mainland, and there's lots of lakes. I mean, there's a big island on the lake, but that's not obviously you've got to get to that by boat. But there's lots of areas of the lake where you can't get to by vehicle, So there's
boat access
by boat, and but anyway, Medine the first year it was singles, and it was over a shorter duration, and it was casting, no boats,
Right, casting as well.
I was on the port side of the big island, and Lockie was next door. There was a mate next door, and I mean, basically, and you wasn't allowed. You was only allowed to waist up I think weighed up to about, it was either waist high. I think waist high, but wherever you cast, it was shallow, So basically all you could do was put a stringer on, and 4-bait stringer on, and blast it out as far as you can get it, and to maybe get in a bit deeper water. But there was no such thing as feeling leads down back then, so you didn't know about that, Having said that, I used to always feel a lead down when I was sea fishing, on that first night, I think in the afternoon, Rob Hughes' wife, Kathy, she was to the left of me. She caught one, and it was quite short range. She caught it as well. I think she caught it down the PVA bag because it sort of almost landed across my lines when she cast it. And I remember thinking about she nearly crossed me then, and she caught one, a 35-pounder. And then in the darkness, I had a bite, and you go out there with your landing net, and just throwing your landing net in front of you and just keep walking through the darkness, and out in the lake, because you could walk 100 yards out and it's
still waist deep.
Yeah, still waist deep, and or a bit more than waist deep maybe, and I landed one just under 40 pound. On the strength of that, me and Lockie, because we were next to each other, though we was competing against each other, we decided to bait up an area between us and share one rod
on each side of it,
and then the others fish wherever. And so we spent all day spodding, throwing stick, and all. In actual fact, both of us, I could hardly lift my arm by the end of the day. We've thrown out so much, about throwing stick, and it got dark, and we're sitting there together, between our swims, having a chat and whatever, and out in the darkness, we were right on the money, right on their spot. There we go, nothing happened. And there's a bloke that's 200 yards away from us, down the bank on the island still, and he comes second, and all he used for the duration of that, I think it was 50 hours, the duration of the match, and all he used was, he had a bag of Kevin Maddocks, great big, about sort of 20 mil RM30, RM cream boilies or whatever they're called, and he has half a bag left, So, so those carp in Medina. So I learned a lesson there.
Yeah,
those carp don't necessarily you don't stop them with a load of bait. They do what they want to do. And that one with jump was probably on its way to. They might have picked up a couple of baits, but then just carried on going.
Yeah, you ain't going to hold them when they're coming through.
No, that's right. Yeah.
But you've had some success, international competitions.
Yeah, that's right.
Proper success.
I fished the Medina the following year when it became pairs. There was still no boating. It was still 50 hours. And I fished it with Paul Forward, and Paul, it was on the dam wall, which was a nightmare of a place to fish. It was it's dangerous.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah, you're all rocks to climb
Steep
down and everything.
and horrible.
And Paul, there was a little wee beds out in the lake, and Paul lost one. He had a bite. I don't know if it was the first night, the second night, and that was all we had. Like, I think I'd done it. I think I missed out the next year. Yeah, I think I missed out a couple of years. They changed venues. They changed to a lake called I can't remember what the lake, another French lake, and I didn't go to that. And then they started back at Medina again. I went to Medina again, and I think didn't catch anything. And then after that, I think I had a year off of it. And then one day, and it was nearly when the event was going to be taking place, I had a phone call from Tim. Did I want to fish with him? As part of the Carp World team at Medina. I said, yeah,
get me down.
Yeah, great, and we fished it together, and it was great fishing with Tim. I was honoured to fish with him, and he was honoured to fish with me, and but between us, we've had some shit. Mainly, the thing is, Medina, we got to know Medina so well that when you pull that number out of the hat, you're either going to be camping for the week, or you might catch one. You're certainly not going to win it.
You'd had a bad run of draws, hadn't you?
Yeah, bad run of draws, and but we kept going. I kept going, and every year I had poor draws, and then Tim. I think I don't think I'd caught anything in any of them. But most of the time we both blanked. It just wasn't happening. And then. And they changed the rules all of a sudden. It was down to the now prior to this, there was a year where it changed from Medina to Lake Bolsena, and I'd done the first because in 2000. Forget about the World Cup Classic for the moment. I was at Medina when Tim said about the carp angling world championships in America.
And St. Lawrence.
On the St. Lawrence River, and he was already teamed up. He was looking for another team member for the carp world team, and he'd asked me, and I'd agreed. And he said, "But you've got to get yourself a partner," and because he was already fishing with Steve Briggs.
Oh, okay.
And this was 2011, I think. Yeah, 2011. And 2010 probably.
Yeah.
And he said, I think Chile might be interested. And so me and Chile went off and fished the
St. Lawrence.
And Bolsena.
Oh, okay.
I think that's not the order it's in, was it? Yeah, it was me and Chile, whatever. Anyway, we never done any good at Bolsena the first year. So me and Chile fished together. And the following year, I fished Bolsena with Rob Tuff, and we come second place.
Yeah.
And that was lots of bites as well. It was completely different. And
why was that? Draw tactically? Did you do anything different?
Well, you got a lake about the size of the island. Sorry, the lake is
massive.
It's the biggest volcanic lake in Europe. In English terms, it's something like 10 miles long and 8 miles wide. So it's pretty big. So you can't really. We didn't really do anything different as such. We obviously drew a. They said one thing I did do differently. I put some rubby-dubby bags out. I filled these bags up with what's it called? What's the ground bait stuff they use? Vitamin.
Oh, Vitamin.
Yeah. Loads of Vitamin, but the bag, it couldn't actually escape from the bag. So I put them down there in I've done it twice that week in different areas where me and Rob were fishing. Loads of attraction, stuff in it as well. So it obviously might attract things in. Whether it works or not, I don't know, but it didn't put the fish off.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think I finished up with 21 bites,
How close were you to first?
I don't know about pounds wise. The two Dynamite girls won it. You know, they won it, but they had a big advantage. I mean, me and Rob was a pair. You know, we you know, if you get a wind on those, even a fairly light wind is quite strong on lakes that size. You know.
Yeah.
And but they put a boat ban on. So, not necessarily a boat ban. You couldn't go out there and and put your baits out properly or whatever. And where these girls because they had a runner who could also use the boat. Yeah, they had no problem with that. All they had to do is concentrate on fishing, so they had a bit of advantage over us. I mean, we had a couple of bites where the wind was so bad, and when you got to go out of the boat on your own, it would have been, and we both lost fish. But I finished up with 20. I had 21 bites, and I obviously had the better side of. Strange thing happened there as well. It was not long. I mean, Bruce Ashby had fished it a year before. Who I was a good friend with, and he was all set to fish it that year, but unfortunately he died of prostate cancer, and I'd done a bit of up on stage, little tribute to Bruce and everything at the opening ceremony, and it was as if I was being guided when I was out there, because I was fishing as a spot that was 19.4 foot.
Mm-hmm.
Going out there, sort of, and what I was doing, if you got a bite, he was taking a couple of rigs, had a couple of rigs all ready to go on the boat.
Yeah.
Going out there, playing the fish and trying to play it as near to you could as your marker as possible. And then, as near as and then net it, make it all safe on the boat and everything, attach another rig.
Drop it.
Get it in on the spot, and then go back with a fish and your other rod. Another rod.
Double up. So you don't have to go back out all the time.
Two occasions when I got back to the bank, handed the rod up to Rob, and or handed the fish over to Rob, and handed the rod up to him, and it's gone off immediately. So I've gone straight back out of there. But no, we done well. But we came second place, which was good result, for us. And but then 2017, we at some point a year or so before that, they changed the rules where it used to be like the combined weight of fish caught, that won it, and but they changed it to the weight of the three biggest fish caught, which changed the game because it gives people more chances, Yeah,
you're always in it, aren't you, with free fish?
Yeah, because what normally happens if it's a total weight, you get by Wednesday, someone's running away with it, and even if you start catching, you ain't going to catch them, Yeah. And for once we had what we knew was a good draw, and so we got out there on the Monday. Really, I mean, the collective age between me and Tim was, before this was because before this was the St Lawrence.
St Lawrence was 2011, I think. Was
2011
with Chile.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, 2000. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, that's right.
According to my research, it is.
It was 2011.
St Lawrence with Chile.
Chile, which is why we fished together in Bolsena, because it was qualified that we won a place into the World Carp Classic the following year. That's why that year I didn't fish with Tim.
But that year at St Lawrence, you boys fished really well, mate, didn't you?
St Lawrence, it was. I've got to say, it's the most. It's the most hardest I've ever fished. Those St Lawrence, we've got to swim in the shipping channel, and I always remember the first day we got all set up. It started and all that, and about an hour after it was about. I think it was a bit. I think it was a bit of a spit that come off the mainland. It was out there, or it was at the end of a long island or something like that, which went a long way, and then. That's probably about 200 yards away, and then you got this island or whatever it was, spit, and then you got Canada, over there. Well, this was a shipping channel between, and perhaps it might not be as wide as 200 yards. And an hour into the competition, I said, Chili, look at that coming down here. There's this tanker coming down here, which is the biggest tanker I've ever seen. It's about 100 containers on it. And I thought, shit, and it's. And we both looked in disbelief. And the action of that coming along, the water goes down. When it comes level, all your rods go mad. 2 rods each. You've got to redo them. And the water goes down by about 10, 15 foot. And then when the ship's gone past, it comes up with vengeance, And this was happening all afternoon,
Oh.
On a fairly regular basis, And but when it got dark as well, we thought that's it. I had 3 just in the first night. I had 3 fish I'd caught in a sack, ready to be weighed, and I say ready to be weighed. I was going to have to save them to the next morning. All of a sudden, lights of a ship coming down. They come along overnight as well.
Oh, nice.
Not as much, But
that is relentless, isn't it?
When it went past, there's we looked and it all calmed down. The water came back again. There's 3 carp sacks up on the rocks where the water's come up with vengeance. It's just threw the sacks out of the water onto the bank.
Oh, my days.
And onto the rocks. And so we then said, we rang the organiser, Dave Moore. I said, Dave, we've got to have marshals around here weighing people all night,
Yeah, otherwise we ain't going to have them in the morning.
It's not safe, But we, I can say we fished well. I mean, I've got quite a lot. I don't know if Chili had as much experience as me as fishing the river. I don't know, but between us, we worked out. We was used three different types of bait. We used boilies, we used maize, and we used grits. Grits,
the American,
American like pack baits.
Yeah,
I think they call them. But grits mixed with cream corn. It's the best ground bait ever, But what you have to work out.
Where to put it in.
Some people, where you got to put it in, how you got to bait up, on the river. And so we worked out how we worked it out. We covered everything up with Ming oil, with Jacko used to sell, and just watch where it settled. You get it out. So what in the end we was baiting with maize over there, and that would end up in front of you, and then a little bit to the left of that, to the right of that, sorry, you could put the boilies in and the grits balls a little bit to the right of that, and then everything ended up in front of you, and
but that's hard work.
Add to that, there's two English lads, young lads, fishing not too far away from us to our left, and they didn't have a clue about river fishing, so they was baiting up in front of them. So obviously we ended up with their stuff and all,
Yeah.
And but once after that first night, you had to keep baiting. You had to keep baiting all the time and recasting and all that. And then gradually I'm not blowing our own trumpet. We was like a well-oiled machine between us. We knew exactly what we had to do. Downside of it was you have to climb over to rocks to get to your rods, and lack of sleep, and because you had to be, giving it for all the time, and these flying things that land on you. Not only have they stung you, they've drawn blood, and you got streaks of blood going down you, and it was so exhausting, for the duration of the match, which was I think it was 105 hours. We had a total of 7.5 hours sleep each, and our backs up. Chili couldn't even put footwear on because his feet were swollen up so much, and we just sort of. Near the end, we both wanted to give up, but there was a stage as well where we think one of the marshals drugged us, because
one of the marshals.
Our backs were aching so bad, really, really, really bad, and we could hardly walk or anything like that, because physically it was, you actually, if you wasn't, you had if you wasn't tying a rig or whatever, like you was baiting up or you was playing a fish, you know.
Yeah.
And those St Lawrence carp, they always go down streams, so they might not be big, you know. They're not big, but because they're going downstream,
You use the
and on the bite, you know, you can't pick the rod off the rod rest for a little while, you know. Just hold it there and let it go on the bait runner, and then, you know, once you slow down a bit, then engage it.
Unbelievable.
You know. And but this fella come along to us, he's a Marshall, American fella. He said, "Oh, when I come back later, boys," he said, "I'll bring you something for your backaches." Like, you know, I said, "Oh, okay, you know, that'd be good." And he come back and give us a tablet each. And after about a half hour, I don't feel right. And I said, Shelley, you feel all right? He said, in his Devon accent, "No, Jacko, I don't feel right."
What way? What do you mean? You just
we don't know. My head was so fuzzy and you know, and sort of, you know, all I wanted to do was go to sleep, you know. And but we set through it, you know. We set it out and fought it, and
excuse me, sorry.
And eventually it was okay, you know. But we found out this fella there was an American pair not that far away from us. They was doing really well.
What, and he was their fellow?
He was their friend.
And he's chucked you a dodgy pill?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, possibly.
Definitely has, hasn't he?
Possibly. It sounded that way, you know. But they didn't. The Americans definitely didn't want us English to win, you know. And but we stuck it at the end, you know. And yeah, we won.
Smashed him up, mate. That's got to be a good feeling on there.
Yeah, I mean, the former time, it was the time before. I mean, it's only ever been held twice, that competition, and on the there's only two pairs names on the Tim and Steve Briggs and Chilly and myself, you know, and
that's a great.
No, that's a great thing when you're standing there and
national anthem and the lots, yeah,
that's right, yeah.
That's got to be a very proud moment because there's doing it domestically, but then there's going over to somebody else's sort of bread and butter, taking on the world, if you like, and doing it and winning. Yeah,
and there was and then there was Medine 17 where we got a good draw, me and Tim.
Oh,
and,
that was a fairy tale, mate. That 17, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah, it was. You know, it's. I mean, on the Monday, the collective age between the pair of us was 140 years. You know, and and we got all this gear over to the back of the island and the end of the island, should I say? And the Monday is a nightmare, you know, and it starts on Monday afternoon around about 2:00. But to be honest with you get your baits out there where you think, you know, it's all boating work, you know, and which is not as easy as casting them out from the bank, you know, and especially with me, because I don't use boat very often, so I'm not as competent as Tim is, you know, and so you get them out where and hope that you might get a bite on the first night, but we didn't, you know, and the next morning, Tim said, I always remember this bit. Tim said to me, he's standing down by the rods and he said, "Jacko," he said, "you can go quite a bit left to where you've gone." And I said, "Yeah, I'm going to," you know. And he said, "Can I ask you to put a big bait, a bit of bait out there?" He said, "You've got to bait your feature on these venues." I said, "No." So what do you mean, no? I said, "Tim, I don't fish like that." You know, I said, "No," you know, and I didn't mind like what me and Lockie from the first one, you know, where we put all that bait in. Yeah. And he said, "You've got to make bait your feature." I said, "Tim, no." And he's by this time he's waving his arms at me.
Done well, yeah.
And I said, "Look, Tim, you fish the way you want to fish, and I'll fish the way I'm going to fish. And if your method works, I'll switch it over to you and vice versa, you know." And anyway, on the Tuesday afternoon at 4:00, it started raining and the wind was horrendous and there was a boat ban on and everything, and it rained for...
Do they ban the boats because of safety, so you couldn't use them?
Yeah, because safety. It's not safe to go out there on the boat in them conditions, you know, and it was pouring down with rain, which made it worse. And it didn't stop for 24 hours.
Oh.
It started... So 25 hours, I think it was, because it started at 4:00 in the afternoon on a Tuesday and stopped went calm on 5:00 in the afternoon on Wednesday.
Oof.
And there's loads of weed over your lines and everything. And I was out in front of the rods, clearing off weed off my line and everything like that. It turned my alarms off, and Benji standing behind me rods, and he said, "Jacko, you got a bite? You got a bite?" I said, "No, it must be me." He said, "No, you got a bite." And sure enough, that was our first fish. And that was Wednesday, and which was, in English terms, was 41 pound. And then, like I said earlier, I've only got to catch one, and that's it. I'm confident I can catch more, And
was it any specific area, or what was it? Or was it just the fact that the fish had just turned up on you?
It was. I mean, the area looked good for a bite,
yeah.
But it's you don't see enough of it when you're out in the boat to know if it was But the one thing I do, I don't put lots of bait in. Yeah,
you were saying.
Yeah, I just put a few baits, sprinkling the tigers out there, and and fish for one carp at a time, basically. And anyway, I had the next bite on the Thursday evening, which was the biggest fish of the competition, which was 56 pound.
What did that go like, mate?
Yeah, you go out in the boat, and it was a bit.
Because also, when you're in the boat, you're on a big expanse of water. You haven't got like a solid purchase for the thing, are you?
No, it's very difficult. It's hard to know, really, because sometimes all you're doing is pulling. The fish can pull you along, basically.
Yeah.
And but no, it was quite an hard fight, like they all are. But then going into the last night, like the Friday night, it ends at 8:00 in the morning. We only had 2 fish on the scoreboard, so we was probably about down to 11th place at that point. Then 10:00 in the evening on the Friday evening, I had another bite, and gone out, and that was the first one was 55. I think that was about 50. What's that? About 54 pound or something like that. The second one, and which we think put us in first place, and. We had a WhatsApp group, English lads on the lake, and Jacko and Tim, bring it home for England, and all that. And I jokingly said, about tongue in cheek, said, could do with up in our third fish a bit, the 41 pounder. Let me have a cup of tea and I'll sort it out, And that was completely tongue in cheek. And at 3:00 in the morning, I had another bite, and I had in English terms, 47 pounder.
Perfect.
Which put us in first place by 0.2 of a kilo, something like that, So it was a close thing, but it was meant to be, wasn't it? And that was great. That was fantastic to win it.
What's it like when you 0.2 of a kilo up and you've got like some hours? Because I remember there was
nerve-wracking.
There was a few hours that, because I remember, I don't know if it was covered on Facebook Live or if it was covered on social media, but I remember watching it and it was all being talked about. But I remember there was like an interim period of time where you were basically gnats them out in front and there was still time for somebody to catch one and everybody was like, oh,
yeah, the
God.
trouble is you when you're competing, you don't see that because you're not watching that. It's people at home. Like it'd be, in my case, it was my wife watching it. She stayed awake with you on that last night. Because she's watching what's going on and all that, and it was. It was. I'm so proud of Tim, and we every year Tim used to say, "This is my last year," And after the event, that's when we packed up, having blanks, or whatever, and I had a bad draw, which we had most of the time, and but eventually he said, I might do it one more year, but that was definitely going to be his last year. But because we won it, we felt obliged to do it the next year. We had a real crap draw, and that was also coincided with the because in that area the First World War ended. I think in that area, that Verdun area, and it was the 100th anniversary of that happening. And Tim said to me, "Well, Jacko," he said, "this is where the First World War ended. He said 100 years ago. He said, "This is where I think it's about the right time. This my me coming to these matches again, Yeah. So
Out of all your sort of partners, you got Chili, you got Rob, you got Tim. obviously your partner, you sort of how you work together is really important. Plus, also on those competitions, you got runners as well.
Yeah.
What was there any sort of testing times with them, or was it all like a quite good sort of complementary partnership with all your partners?
Yeah.
I know that with Tim, you wanted to do your own thing and not put bait in because Tim likes to put a load of bait out.
But I mean, you fish as a team. Yeah, I think it was okay.
Yeah,
it was good. You fish as a team and help each other, and I mean, even sometimes you might not agree with what the other one's doing.
Of course not.
But it's and yeah. So it's but you try your hardest, and
that's some results, mate.
Yeah,
pretty consistent. When you've had good draws, you've done really well. When you haven't had good draws, there's not a lot you could do because it's the nature of the beast, isn't it?
That's right, yeah.
For you, those matches, especially those sort of Medine matches and on those bigger venues with those big fish, are they more appealing than sort of maybe your domestic matches, or are they all ranked as important or as special?
I think I like Medine. I think the thing I like about Medine, like the international ones, is you meet up with people that you haven't seen for a year,
Yeah.
And it's sort of sad for this coming year because this year, it's in September this year. But when you look on the list, the participant list, there's Ukrainian people on there, and you think, hope they're all right,
Yeah,
and likewise, probably a lot of the Russians don't want the war to go. They don't want the war.
No,
it's
they're in a difficult spot as well.
It's a very difficult sort of situation, but yeah, and it's been difficult times, isn't it? What with that and the COVID and all that, and it's one thing after. I think somehow, I sort of think that what's going to happen, I think, is, I hope I'm wrong, but I think man's going to kill mankind. And eventually, and the planet's going to survive. Be the way it's going. It's but yeah, and let's talk about fishing.
Yeah, but looking back over that your match sort of career and those wins, is it something you're going to carry on doing?
Yeah, I'm doing it again. I've done it every year still since 2000.
You're going to keep doing them
as long as I'm able. Yeah, as long as I'm able. I think because the buzz, as I said earlier, the buzz of when you're doing okay, in the match, or you're standing on that podium, whether it be first or second place or whatever.
Yeah, it's pretty mega.
But and I like it as long as I'm able. It's I don't think I'll ever get fed up with it. It's aspects I look forward to because it's a very different type of fishing for me, like using a boat and all the boating side of it, and it's quite exciting, because you get a bite and. You don't know what you got in the end,
Some people go for a holidays carpet in France. You go for a big match, mate. I like that.
Well, I mean, I've been to a few holidays in France, but not many, but it's nice. I like the competitive side. I like the build up to it as well. The thing I don't like is when you look forward to it for a long while and then you put your hand in the hat and you've got a shit draw, But
that's that's match fishing, isn't it?
But having said that, under the miracles could happen because the year that me and Tim won it in 2017, there was areas of the lake that don't normally do any good, done okay.
Okay.
So you never know. Under this free fish...
Yeah, it's a bit more even, the playing field, isn't it?
Free fish thing, that it could sort of be even out a little bit, but be more people with a chance, in other words,
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. An aspect I've got to talk to you about, and this is probably where... Yeah, you first, I don't know, cropped up on my radar, especially as when I was a younger angler, is the whole sort of you working within the trade, but also sort of media. And I say media sort of loosely because you've done everything from writing, being on telly, DVDs, a book. You've done the lot, mate. I think I first saw you in the absolute iconic Jacko and Terry Go Carp Fishing, mate. Though they were incredible DVD/videos, VHSs, mate. They were brilliant. Yeah. That whole series, that sort of time with Tell, how did that all come to be? Who pitched the idea to you, and did you think it would be such cult sort of? I don't know. It is. I don't know if you can still find it on YouTube. Maybe somebody's put it on YouTube.
I don't think it's on YouTube.
Is it not? No, me and Dan Wildboar, we were together on Linear like a few weeks ago, and we were talking about it, and we were both referencing the same like set of DVDs, saying we've watched them endless and countless amounts of times. Yeah, Plus, Dan does a very good impression of you as well, mate. So you need to get him to do that.
I see. Yeah. Who's that?
Dan Wildboar, mate. You need to get him to do that. I'll see if I can get a voice note of it for you, mate, and send it over. It's good. It's very good. Yeah. But we were reminiscing about it, mate. They're absolutely iconic. They were absolutely brilliant and ahead of their time, to be fair.
Yeah, so I mean, Len Gerd had been a long time friend, and I can't remember if I think I've probably done some filming with Len before that, you know, for like the garden tackle stuff, and I think there was a couple of other things maybe done as well before the Challenge Jacko things. Yeah, they've done one with Richworth as well, and yeah, I mean, Len. It was just Len. I mean, Len's was involved in sort of filming for quite a while before I ever got involved, you know, and it was obviously his hobby more so than fishing, you know, and yeah, then I think it's a conversation between the pair of us, and he'd like to do a series and a couple of it was them videos, not
videos, yeah, it was VHSs,
with me and Terry in it, and I can't remember exactly how it came about, but we went for a meeting with Peter Drennan. We was all set up to do the first one on his what's called Peter Drennan's lake, albeit Peter doesn't own it. I think he just controls the fishing on it, you know. And we met up and done that one on the first one on there, and as well as some other venues as well. I think two, wasn't it? Yeah, Ken and Jacko, 1 and 2, yeah. And it was great fishing with Terry. I mean, I'd known Terry by that time, and you know, from fishing like Conningbrook, and you know, done a bit over Sutton, and you know, and places like that, and always got on well with Terry at shows and everything. And it was good stuff. Like, you know,
you caught the big one, didn't you?
Yeah, in the first one. I mean, we I think we both on Peter Drennan's lake, we both caught the same amount of fish, I think, you know, around about the same amount of fish.
Yeah.
When we went out onto some of the linear fisheries, I think Terry done better than me.
Was there any competition between you, or was it just, I don't know?
Not really. No. It's no, you just get on with, you know, your own sort of thing, way of fishing. Yeah. I think what's Terry's one of his very, you know, good qualities. He's got patience. One of my best qualities is I'm opposite from that. I'm impatient, you know, and that sort of work between the two of us, you know, because you know, Terry's, you know, he's 100% confident. He's got his bait in the best position possible, you know, and everything's right about it, you know, it's just a waiting game and the patience, you know, where
you're smashing yellows into the middle.
Well, I'm not like that. I'm sort of, I've got to move that a bit. I'll try over there, and it's we're completely different angles to each other, you know, but it worked. And the thing is, when we've done the second one, the big blue one, the reason we called it the big blue one, because the first time we visited the lake, we had a mate, because it was it used to be Blue Circle, but it changed to Lafarge, a French company, and they didn't actually allow fishing on any working sites. And this lake at Buckden in Cambridgeshire was actually a working site. You know, there was about 3 lakes within the works. You know, and because of his involvement with I forget what the lake he was involvement in Bedfordshire, you know, and Elstow, he had a good relationship with Lafarge and whatever, and the site manager on this lake at Buckden, he was it was a little bit of a method in his madness, I think, because he was a bit of a he'd fished it a few times himself, but hadn't done any good, and he thought, well, if I get 2 decent anglers on there, they might teach me a bit, you know. So I think I was a bit of a method in his madness, and so we went up for a meeting with him. Bob, his name was, and and showed us the lake. And the first fish we saw was this mirror, which we both estimated at sort of £40, and it was out in the lake a bit, and it had the sort of like a bluish sort of tinge to it. That's why we call it the big blue one. And me and Terry couldn't wait to get back there, and we went back the following week, and unfortunately Len couldn't make it. He was away on holiday or something or other. Oh. And the following week, and we caned it. Terry, I think we only done one night and a day. We had a load of fish between us. The lake was two parts. There was a big main bit, then there was like a channel which was about 70 yards wide. Then went out to a smaller bit which was very weedy, and we smashed them up in the channel. We caught. Well, I don't like that word, smashed them up, because we don't smash them up, we should caught them.
Yeah,
and we both had a right result that first time, and then it got hard. When we went with the camera, it was
classic when you got the camera, mate. Though, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the trouble is the fish become wary. We taught them, and sometimes you see them come through that channel fairly quick, Yeah, and we did catch some more fish, and then I think Terry was the first one to lose interest, really, because he was on his campaign to catch the sonning fish, and so I just kept going by myself with Len. And we had a great time. The good thing about it, you drive up there and there's only one person fishing it. You had all the lakes to yourself, or even if when Terry was fishing, you had one other person there. We got on ever so well, me and Tel. Had a bit of a social as well with Len as well. Len was a lovely fella. And that was it for the first year. We'd done a couple of winter trips on there. Well, I did anyway. I can't remember if Terry did, but it was a waste of time. There wasn't many fish in there at the end of the day. Terry's a little bit more observant than me regarding looking at fish in the water, seeing fish in the water, and we reckon there was. At the time, there was only, after the event, there was only sort of a couple of fish that we hadn't caught, what we say, or what Terry's mainly see, because he was normally there. Most times he was there a day before me,
Yeah.
And anyway, we left it to the next April, and we fished a big open part of the lake, which we'd never really fished before. And Terry again got there. I think the day before, and he'd positioned his baits all in,
set his traps
properly like he does, and I fished to the right of him, and I was just, dare I say, it was Jacko pops again.
I remember you just smashed him into
I was just sort of casting where I thought,
smashing into the middle. You casting them quite long, weren't you?
Quite long, yeah.
I remember that.
Just and it's, and I'm willing to do that, but I'm willing, but. You can get different sorts of angles. Terry was a sort of person. That's why I say he's patient. He's 100% confident his baits are in the right place. Where I'm not necessarily. So I think, try it a bit, because that's how I've always fished. I get home from work and finish work as a dustman and go down the lake and cast where I think. And
it worked, mate. You had it, didn't you?
And yeah. And I think if me and Terry was to fish a match together, I think I'd beat him on the short term. But on the long term,
he'd have it.
He'd catch more.
Yeah.
He'd do the best. No doubt about it.
It's styles of angling, isn't it?
It's different styles of angling, and it's
because that fish could have quite easily turned up on Terry's spot and had him before.
Yeah,
but he weren't there, and you had him out.
Terry did catch carp on his side, and on that last session, but it was great, and it was a making of the a good ending to the
a round off, yeah.
But
that wasn't your own last performances, talking on camera and stuff. You did a load of tight lines, didn't you? On tight lines. How many episodes did you do of that?
I think 16.
That's good going, mate.
Yeah. Which I really enjoyed it. I mean, in the early times of doing it, it was live.
How was that, mate? Because you before there's no TV or anything. A few DVDs, VHSs, whatever. But live TV must be pretty nerve-wracking.
It was ever so nerve-wracking. I mean, you drive over to the Sky Studios, which was over West London, and on a Friday, and unlike us today, you go in the makeup room.
And, we don't need makeup.
And then you're in the studio, and there's no sort of rehearsals. They might have done a bit of filming with you. Like one occasion, me and Terry done some filming on a day ticket walk around near where I used to live, Capstan Park, and had a great, and tight lines. If you've ever seen it, was a little clips of a fishing clips or something like that. Then it's live questions, and it was when you go in the Sky Studio. There's lights everywhere. Yeah, and there's a monitor there. You can see the monitor there. You can see, and it's just bright lights, and it's why they have makeup, because
it
shines off you, especially if you've got a bald head, and but it was. But Keith Arthur, it was in the early days. It was Keith Arthur and Bruno Brooks.
Yeah,
and Bruno Brooks is sort of running it. And me and Keith really are answering the questions and things like that, and. But Keith would be all chilled and everything, and all the time he's chilled and all that. I'm sitting there pooing myself, and you can see the clock, he's all chilled out, and I'm watching the clock, and then the adverts are on and all that. And you're all watching the clock, and all of a sudden there's the theme tune, and away you go, and then it's a lot of the questions are live, But to be honest with you, once it started, after that initial, it's once it started, I was well into it, and it was great. And me and Keith got on really well. And he's got a fantastic knowledge of fishing, full stop.
Yeah,
and so sometimes you'd be asked if it was live questions, they'd ask you a question, and you couldn't, and you have to be quick with your answer, So sometimes it can be the first thing that enters in your head. That's what you have to say, basically, to answer that person's question. Because they ring up and they say, I've got a question for Lee, or I've got a question for Keith. If it's Keith, it's Keith. And I can remember this fella, me and my son are fishing this lake and we're having trouble with the ducks diving down and eating our bait. And all I could think of was a catapult and a ball bearing.
Did you say that?
No, I didn't. I couldn't say nothing Not that I've ever done that, but I've seen people do it. Fire ball bearings.
Imagine that on live TV, mate.
Yeah, and I thought, so he sort of, there was a couple of times, and he dug me out of it, and I also, the way people talk. I had a fella from Halifax, I think it was, ring up, and I couldn't understand a word he said.
PVA bags, mate. That's what you need.
Yeah, another very embarrassing one was I remember there was an advert for a Tang de Royal or something, like something to do with Richworth, and it's John Offgardner. Well, I was turning a copy of Carp Talk, and I thought, that's me, and it was actually John Offgardner with a pair of optics glasses on, sunglasses, but it looked like me, and I thought, shit, and everyone showed you, it looks like you. When I was on tight lines, the next time I was on tight lines, a fella rang in. He said, "I got a question for Lee." He said, "Me and my son are going to France." So he Tang de Royal, whatever he's, and whatever the lake was called, and if you can give us any guidelines, and I said, well, I said, oh, hello, whatever his name was. Yeah, so I've never actually been there, but I can give you a little bit of advice going for these holiday type blah blah blah, sessions in France and all that, holiday sessions, and when it was a break, he said to me, Keith, he said, "What do you mean?" you don't know anything about the kangaroo. He said, you're all over the adverts. I said, that ain't me. So even he thought it was me. But after a while, they... all I can say, I must have made a fairly good job of it because I kept getting asked back, unlike some other people, and...
too right.
And I enjoyed it. And after a while, I had to change it to filming it on the Thursday because... The problem is because the Sky TV, there's quite people involved,
Yeah, of course.
Involved with it, and sometimes people would be caught in a traffic jam or something like that, or
just couldn't be live, could it?
Just couldn't get there, so they had to do it, pre-recorded the day before.
That was an institution, mate. That was Tight Lines.
Yeah.
What an absolute
I enjoyed
show.
it. I really enjoyed it. Yeah. I was really sorry that it went. Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously, sort of probably preceding all this, you've got writing, like tons of writing. You've done loads and loads of articles for various publications, Improve Your Course Fishing all the way through.
Yeah.
And cumulatively, in terms of writing, obviously your book, which is probably, and I said this at the time, as an instructional rig book for the time that it was published in, massively influential for a lot of anglers that were coming up because information, there was no YouTube, there was no sort of social media sources that we have now. No. Those sort of publications, or a lot of anglers of that generation were the guides, if you like, to rigs and which is exactly what the book was all about.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I wrote for Improve Your Course from the very first issue, and I quite like sort of diary type writing, because it brings back memories for me, and it's nice to write sometimes, and but I don't particularly like instructional writing because I find it difficult to do, and I'm not a brilliant writer anyway. It takes me ages to write things sometimes, and but Improve Your Course Fishing. So I didn't like what I was having to write, but to be honest with you, I didn't mind reading the end result, when it appeared in the magazine. And plus, I was getting paid for it. And when you've got a wife and three youngish kids, the money comes in handy, and that's my truth, And I was writing for 3 magazines at a time. But with Improve, after about 13 months, they decided to turn some of their things like into a book, an instructional book. And so I think the first one was Jan Porter, and it was called Float Clinic. And they'd done one. I wanted to do one with me called Carp Clinic, which is just basically reproducing the articles what was in Improve, the monthly magazine, but adding a bit to it, and obviously adding quite a lot more photos as well. And it was something that sold in Waterstones and W.H. Smith, as well as by EMAP and whatever.
That's big in itself, isn't it, mate?
So it is big, and so I'm told, because they've done a reprint of it as well. I'm told and it was $6.99. Or I think it went up a little bit on the second reprint, and I was told it's the top selling carp book ever. But because of the people, it was right. But though I didn't like reading it, there was loads of people over the years come up to me, like you said today, people come up to me. Because people are frightened to ask things sometimes, don't they? They're too embarrassed to go in a fishing tackle shop and ask about something that they don't know,
I'd punish the tackle shop owner, Fred, but I don't reckon he's actually any good as an angler. In terms of carp fishing, he was a matchman. So, bit of knowledge from an actual carper was... You know what some people like? They're afraid to ask because in case you think they're a div. Yeah,
and it's not the case, is it? But that's the way they feel. Too embarrassed to ask. Yeah. And whereas if they can read it in a book, then it's all. But I've had loads of people come up to me. I've learned something on every page, and that makes me feel good, because it's helped someone.
Yeah,
and it's silly things, isn't it? Sometimes, I mean, people can get so confused with this carp fishing, can't they? It's. They got a yellow pop-up pop up on, so it's got to be a yellow boilie stop, or the lead's got to be brown because it matches the bottom, or this, that, or another, like, you know, and you know, the rig tube has got to be green or brown or to match the bottom or whatever, like that, you know. I couldn't give a shit if it's red, pink, or anything like that, because carp, we sort of teach carp, then we be wary of things, you know.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any difference to the carp, you know.
No.
And, yeah, so it's.
Have you seen that change, mate, in your time?
People need the confidence. That's what you're trying to sort of, you know. I always, you know, when I'm working in the years of working for the tackle box,
yeah,
it was always my aim for someone to walk out the shop with a bag of confidence. You know, if they've asked, you know, if they're going around the wall and just picking up stuff, you know, picking up stuff that they know they want to buy. But if they're asking advice about something and they go, or like what bait should I use or whatever, you know, and you can advise them, and they walk out that shop with a bag of confidence, and they will catch fish because of that, because they're confident.
Yeah.
You know, because, you know, it's that's great. You know, that's great stuff. Like, you know, and it's all about, as I said earlier, it's all about confidence, isn't it? You know, you're having the confidence in your own fishing, you know, or unconfidence. You know, I can be terrible sometimes. You know, I can wake up. You know, as you get older, believe you me, you get up more for a wee in the night, especially if you drink as much tea as me, and you know, I can wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and all of a sudden I think, I've got to change that rig, or I've got to change that rod or something, and end up recasting all 3 rods, you know, in darkness.
Really?
You know, and I don't use distance sticks and things like that, you know. In fact, you know, some people say to me, how many wraps is that?
Yeah.
And I turned around and said, well, I don't know. The only wraps I know about is what they sell in the kebab shop, you know. And but that's me being a bit blasé, really, because yeah, they are a good tool, aren't they, you know. But what I always think about with wraps is it might tell you how far you got to cast. And they're brilliant if you're fishing up against an island or a snag, you know, because you don't want to be casting up that tree, do you? So it's a big plus for that. But but it's not telling you, you know, if you're casting in darkness, it's not telling you how far, you know, how near the target you are that way, is it? You know, and I think because most of my fishing has been done without doing that. That I'm using wraps or anything like that. I will cast, but I do know even now I'm not as good as I used to be with it. But I know that rod, if I cast it, it's 70 yards out towards that tree, that branch there, or that thing there. So, you know, that's good enough for me.
Yeah.
And because I tend to bait up by spreading me bait a little bit, and then like maybe draw attention to the hook bait. You know, if the carp sort of comes, you know, if carps come swimming along there and you've got all your bait there, if you're so swimming along about, well, it might not detect you. But if you put a couple of baits that way, a couple there, it's sort of attracting attention, isn't it? You know, and it's like a Easter egg hunt, isn't it? You know, if I was to say to you, right, you got to, I'm going to hide this box of Easter eggs around the lake, and you've got to find them. And it's Easter, so you've got to find them Easter eggs. And you'd walk around the lake, you'd find all them Easter eggs, and you'd eat a lot. If they're all cream eggs, like, you know, you'd eat a lot there and then, like, you know. If I said to you, I'm going to hide the contents of them all around the lake, and there's 20 Easter eggs, you'd eat the first one, you think, oh, that's nice, I'm going to have another one of them. Yeah. So it's a bit like the carp, isn't it? You know, yeah. So I like that boilie there, so I'll go over and eat that one over there. And their detection is really, I mean, our little dog, our little Jack Russell, you know, he can't see, I mean, depending on what bait it is, he can't see up onto our worktop. But if I put a certain boilie on there or whatever, and he can't see it, and it's in a plastic bag, he's down there squeaking.
Yeah.
He can, you know.
Smell it and all the lot, yeah.
Of
course,
and so the detection of carp, I think, you know, when you consider they can sort of detects a bloodworm they can't even see. You know, they that's why I'm not so. That's why I don't mind using like single hook baits.
Yeah,
because if
they'll find it.
Yeah.
You referenced sort of the tackle box and working within the trade. How many years did you do at the tackle box? You only recently stopped, haven't you?
I left there in end of June in 2020, like the main COVID year.
Yeah. So that was how many years?
32 years, I think it was. Yeah, that would have been me 32nd year. Yeah.
And in that time, and we talked about sort of obviously wrap sticks as one aspect. Have you seen a change in just the general, I don't know, marketing, how marketing, media, etc., and influencers affected sort of the industry and anglers coming into it? Or there's obviously been a lot of change in the period of time of 32 years. There has to have been.
Yeah, there's more. It's more and more. I mean, I'm very proud to have been involved with the tackle box. Very grateful, forever grateful to Gary and Kevin giving me that. And Jackie in latter years for giving me that opportunity to make a living out of my hobby that I enjoyed, And there's not many people can say that, is there? They look forward to going to work. Yeah, I did, Yeah. And but after a while, it's not so much fun anymore, and it's a bit of a show. I used to love doing the catalogue, And but now I've seen it. It's changed so much, because of social media and things like that, and there's lots more carp anglers, and people think they know more than what they do, if you know what I mean. Yeah, it's that's not a contradiction. That's just an observation. But at the same time, I suppose if that person they're confident in what that person on social media says, then they're halfway there. If you tell me that's the best bait to use, and on this lake, and I've got that on, you tell me that's the best rig to use, and if I'm a less experienced angler than you, then I'll take notice.
Yeah.
And
do you think generally the changes and what you've seen are for the better in carp fishing? I know that's a very broad question.
Yes and no. It's great that people can take up carp fishing and it's all there for them. The water's big fish straight away. Big fish waters straight away. They can fish and they've got all the right tackle and the choice of and all the companies. None of them, I'm not going to slag off any tackle or bait company because all of them, at the end of the day, most of them are producing good products.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, they're trying to make it a living, and that's all they're trying to do: earn some pennies, and like companies like Nash. Look how long it's been going, and great products, and here we are sitting at Nash's sort of near Kevin's house, and I can remember coming over in Essex and doing a slideshow when I caught that 40 pounder out of Arrow, and him asking me if I caught if I used one of his carp sacks.
Did you?
I did. Yeah. And that's a long while ago, isn't it? When you think of times like that, and so he's gone from that carp sack to what it is now, and. I think it's changed that there's not so many secrets anymore, and there's not so much mystery anymore, and it's got harder to get a bit of peace and quiet when you're fishing. But it's the main thing is the mystery. There's not many places you can go with, where you don't know what you can liable to catch. That's why I perhaps like Medine and places like that, because
I was going to say there has been a lot of movement of people going towards Europe, hasn't there? For that,
yeah, that's right, yeah. But I'm thinking more about country. In this country, there's not very few places that haven't been, But all I want to do really is go fishing in a nice peaceful atmosphere. Like a lake I like, and fish I like to catch, and But even then, it still burns inside me that I want to catch that, that target here and there, and I strive for a. I think luckily this year, I'm not going to name any names or anything like that. I've joined somewhere in a roundabout way. The man who enabled me to fish for two-tone has now possibly, I don't know because it's all a mystery, given me the opportunity to fish for a carp bigger than the two-tone, an unknown carp, So
that's exciting,
watch this space. That's exciting, And when you're fishing somewhere where you don't know what you can catch, that's exciting, isn't it? It's
if you're excited, mate, and you've done as much carp fishing and caught as many carp, that's what you want. In the interim period, you might have caught a 60-pound mirror, but in recent times, and a very recent recapture of the same fish, you caught a 60-pound common, mate.
Yeah.
Ridiculous fish, that.
Yeah, the Ship Lake, and it's one of the biggest commons in the country, and it's a beautiful carp, and I caught it in. It was never one of my target fish. So I've only ever had 2 target fish. I've got some I wish to catch, but they're not obsessions as such, And they come along what they come along, like when they catch me, you always. I think you always want to catch the biggest one in the lake.
Yeah,
that's what we like, and and then we come out the other side and just want to go fishing again, don't we?
It's
and first we want to catch the most, then we want to catch the biggest and the most difficult, and then we come out the other side and just want to go fishing, and that's a bit like where I am. And, I think it's it's catching at Common. Yeah, it's biggest fish in the lake, so you want to catch it. And it's funny how I've when what led up to me catching two-tone, I didn't think about it. That day, didn't think about it at all. When things like that. And when I caught that Common on November, I think it was November the 16th, 2020. I had no confidence at all that day. It just didn't look right. It didn't look. Sometimes you can't. Especially it's November as well. You don't feel it. I'm not feeling it today, and I was on the phone to my daughter as well at the time. I've been on the phone for my youngest daughter, and been on the phone for about 20 minutes, and that caused a bit of upset because I had a bite when I was on the phone to her and just
dropped her.
I said, I've got to go, got a bite, just threw the phone, and then picked up the rod, and I knew it was a big fish straight away. And then I got it in the edge of this fairly clear water, and there it was, that Common, and it really did fight hard. It's different. It comes out a few times in a year. I always say probably half a dozen times in a year. Maybe less than that. I knew what fish it was. It took about 20 minutes to get it in, and but all the time I was playing it, I could hear my phone was ringing, and it's stopping ringing, and ringing again, and I got the fish in the land, and it made it safe, and then looked at my phone, and it was a phone call from one of my daughter's friends, Debbie, who I know, and I said, "All right, Debbie, you're okay?" And she said, she said to me, "Are you okay?" I said, "I'm more than okay." I said, "I just caught a really big carp." She said, "Well, you better ring your daughter. She thinks you've had a heart attack."
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. And so I rang my daughter, and she's in tears.
Oh, no.
And bear in mind, this phone call's been going on for about 20 minutes. And like her head has said, because she didn't actually, something's happened. Her first thought was, he's dropped the phone in the lake. Second thought was, he's fell in the lake. Her third thought was, perhaps he's collapsed. And so she's worried like hell, and there's me playing the carp, because she don't know that carp's going to take 20 minutes to get in, does she?
I didn't even think about that, mate.
Yeah, so yeah.
But you're all right, you covered.
I was okay. We recovered, yeah.
You nearly had a heart attack when you opened the landing net, I bet, mate. That's an absolute chunk.
Well, I knew
of
what
fish
it was, yeah. And it was, 60 pound, 9 ounces I think it was 60 pound 9 ounces. I think, yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And then you met him again the other day. Like what? Less than a week ago.
It was that was my second 30, second 60, and from the UK, and then not last week before I think it was, on the now I had caught a fish the evening before, 27 pounder, and I had a bite,
and then
same sort of thing with the fight, and it was again, and looking magnificent, and though I'd prefer not to have recaptures, I prefer it if it was one I'd never caught. It's always nice to see the fish is doing okay, and it looked tremendous, you know. And and it was good to see. It was good, but you can't pick and choose, can you? I mean,
you got to shake a 60 off, are you?
No, I mean the guy I run it with, Darren Venables, the Tip Lake. He's been on there quite a few more years than me. I mean, I fished it back in the day in the late 70s through to 1984, and but he's caught the major, the big one. Not at 60 pound, but he's over the years he's caught it 6 times or something like that. That fish. It's only a small lake, so and he's caught most of the fish in there. But there's one he hasn't. Satan's Linear, which is one of the best looking carp I've seen.
Satan's Linear, what a name!
Yeah, it's fantastic, and it's big fish. It's over 40 pound, but that's one he's never caught. Yeah, and so it's a lot of times you can't pick and choose when you're fishing blind, if you like, can you?
Yeah, but, of course not.
And
at the end of the day, it's each to their own, mate. If you're enjoying it, you're happy on there, you're doing the right, mate.
That's right. I always think, you get people say, don't they? I don't know, well, he wants to keep fishing. Who's caught that fish before? So, well, it's none of your business, actually. He likes fishing there, or he just like, some people they're not all like, skipping around, are they? With other people, chasing the big uns, like, bounty, other words, but,
They're just like wherever
some
they're
people
fishing.
do,
I've known lads who are on venues for a long time, caught everything, but they like the venue for whatever reason, and that's down to them.
That's right, down to the.
I think you said it. I think I saw your Sipography interview, mate, and you were very. I think that you were talking about wrong uns and that whole thing, but you were very. I like the way that you were very sort of. Fishing was very personal to you. You were very accepting of other people's sort of motivations to go fishing and what they want. And as long as you ain't hurting anybody and you're happy, that's what fishing's all about. I like the way you put all that.
That's right. I mean, for me, if someone, that lad who caught the 70 pound carp.
Yeah.
He got death threats. That's disgusting. It's not right, because all he's done. I actually wrote him a letter. Roddy Porter. He caught the first.
Yeah.
One,
way back.
When they abolished the close season, didn't they?
Way back.
And it was spawn bound. And I think I did actually message or the kid with the 70 as well.
Yeah.
But people it's
terrible
because he's a young lad. He's gone fishing, and and it's not his fault. He's caught a 70 pounder. Is it? It's and people were slagging him off for that. And that's he wanted to do. He wanted to go carp fishing. He wanted to catch the carp, and he's caught one. It happened to be a really big one. But so what? It's none of everyone else's business what that boy's done. That's so wrong. And to me, if someone puts a big carp in a lake, a really big carp, and for me, it's about as credible for me to catch it as sticking 3 darts in the 2020.
Yeah,
and or going big game hunting in a safari park, and it's the same sort of thing, really. But it doesn't matter, does it? It doesn't matter if people they fish for what they want to fish for, And that lad, he weren't claiming any records, I don't think. The biggest carp caught in the UK is the one at Wingham, which was 82 pound, I think, And I don't know who caught it, and they're not claiming any records, but at the end of the day, what does it matter,
Yeah.
I think, like a lot of things, the carp record, I couldn't actually tell you what the carp record is now. Actual official carp record.
I think it's still is it still the Parrot? It might still be the
possibly,
Parrot.
But it's all sort of after two-tone, like after. I mean, Oz Olness held it for a few years, didn't he? With two-tone. But since two-tone, it's gone a bit unknown, isn't it? You know, it's and
I think it's still it might still be deemed with the parrot. I don't know.
But the thing is with it as well. But you know, it's I don't know. What does it matter now? You know, really, you know, it's you know, it mattered back then, but it perhaps don't matter now because the thing is, all them older fish, they're dying off, aren't they? You know, and you've got different fish coming on, and fish are growing the way they do, and you get fish that are put in lakes big and they grow to a record size. So it's sort of in many ways made a mockery of the British record, but I don't blame people for fishing for those fish. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course not, mate. Yeah. No. Yeah. The last bit before I give you some questions, mate, you've got to do a book. We talked about this, another book, mate. Not a book, an instructional book, but just your life in talking to you for the past sort of few weeks ahead of this podcast. There is so much in it, mate. And I know that you don't particularly find writing easy. Maybe it's not a written thing. Maybe it's but you've got to do a book. I'm sure that the listeners that have listened to us or watched this have got to agree, mate. What a life in carp fishing. When you look back, and try and conceptualise it, you've done so much. You've been, you fished everywhere. You've achieved so much, mate. It's, mate, I think you've got to document it somehow. He's just nodding at me going,
if he's putting pens for paper or typing something, it's just a no. I'm not able to. If it is a ghostwriter or if it was something audio you mentioned earlier.
Audio book, you could maybe, do one of them.
Yeah, if, you know.
Be the one.
If I learned how to do it, you know, it's, you know.
Lee, mate, I cannot thank you enough for being in here. It's genuinely been an honour to have you in here. You are definitely one of my, growing up carping icons, forever will be. Before you go, I've got some quick fire questions, mate. Okay. All right? I don't think I've prepped you with these, so these will be good. They'll catch you slightly off guard. Right, only fish in Kent for the rest of your life or never fish in Kent again?
Only fish in Kent.
Yeah, go on, boy. Who would be your carp fishing five-a-side team? Pick your 5 carpers, mate.
Martin Locke, Paul Forward. I think of this one. Possibly Chile.
Yeah.
And it would definitely have to be one of the lads like sort of Tom Dove or there's probably some Nash fellas, you know, who, you know...
A couple of moderns.
The modern day ones, you know, who are good at the zigs and all stuff like that, which I ain't, you know.
Get those boys in.
Yeah, and rather than that, I'd rather manage it, not be part of the team. I'd rather manage the team.
I reckon you'd be a good gaffer.
With my experience of, you know...
You'd be a good gaffer, mate. You got a few titles under your belt. You'd be all right.
And I'll be the Alf Ramsey of, do that bit, you know.
Player manager, mate. You could still do a job, couldn't you? Drum and bass music or country and western? Which one are you picking?
Neither.
What's your music of choice, mate?
I like rock music and the rock and roll type music, and you know that sort of stuff is my best. I don't like drum and bass music because being a bit of a musician, most of it's not done on a musical instrument, is it?
It's on a computer, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some country and western I like, but you know.
You got to take country and western. That's all right, mate.
I'll take country and western out those two.
Nice. What would you remove from carp fishing?
Anyone who leaves litter.
Good call. Good call. History carp you wish you'd caught?
The Black Mirror.
Yeah, it's the one, isn't it? 3 celebrities that you'd take fishing, could be dead or alive, mate, here.
What, fishing celebrities?
No, they don't have to be. No, not fishing. Outside of fishing, but you want to take them fishing.
I mean, that's a difficult one. It's you know them 2 fellas on the television who've done the recent fishing program. I forget what their names are.
Mortimer and Whitehouse.
Yeah, I'd love to. Them 2. I think that's great. They really, you know, fishing was fun, like, you know, and so that'd be a good shout for 2 of them. And I don't know. It's off the top of my head, I can't think. But yeah, there'd be. I don't know. If it was quite a few years ago, I would have said Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think,
yeah. He's got a. I like the Rocky films.
Yeah,
They're my favourite film. Funny enough, me and my wife watched them all four. I think the first four were the main ones, and we watched them all on the trot last week.
Did you?
Yeah. Well, over 2 nights.
Classics, mate.
Adrian. I like the. I like the. How much he's trying, like his art, and all that. And I just like to meet up with someone like that, take them fishing and see how they perform with a fishing rod. And
Sly, mate, get him on. Best piece of advice that you've been given?
Never give up and never stop trying.
Nice. What's your proudest moment to date?
Proudest moment? We're in fishing.
It's a wide question.
I was proud of all my kids, in different reasons, how they've done in life, with their qualifications as well. And because the offspring they've that's very, very proud of them for that,
Yeah, nice.
And both my daughters and my son, and yeah, that's it's. I don't know what was that. Anything.
That's a good one, mate. That's a good answer.
Proud of the qualifications they got in their work, in progress, and for being fantastic kids. I'm very lucky. I'm proud of them all for producing between them 12 grandchildren.
Yeah.
And when them grandchildren, a couple of them can't talk properly yet because they're not old enough. Yeah. When them grandchildren say granddad.
Yeah, it gets you.
It melts my heart.
Yeah, of course it does.
And so I'm proud of all of them.
They can see what a legend their granddad is as well, mate. The Carpent Circle, can't they, mate? Of course they can. Final question, night in with the missus or night out on the bank? Which one are you picking?
If it's just one night, I'd say no, it's a difficult question. That's a real difficult question because I enjoy a night in most nights of the week. I'm in with the missus, but I think both of you've got to have a little bit of your own space. She likes it when I go fishing because she can do what she likes, watch what she likes on the television, eat what she likes, and anything else, And I like being out on the ground.
Well, that's the most political answer I've ever heard.
That's a very difficult question to sort of,
Well, mate, I'm going to leave that ambiguous as an answer. Lee, all I can say is thank you so much. Genuinely an honour and a privilege to have you in here, mate. Thank you so much for coming in. Thank you guys for watching and listening. I'll be back soon with another Nash Off the Hot podcast. Lee, once again, mate, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for asking me. Yeah, all the best.